The story begins with the protagonist saying he has the same dream every night, a terrible dream full of zombies. A dream in which the apocalypse had come to Earth, a nightmare where the world of the living had turned into hell, and he, in the middle of it all, had one main mission. The mission was to eradicate all the zombies from Earth, and the reward would be to restore everything to its original state. In that place, he was a hunter with a single objective, and he asks if it's time to begin. He presses a device in his hand, and the entire city starts to explode. The zombie horde goes crazy as the buildings begin to collapse, and he throws himself into the street. A boy appears in style, holding a chain. He lands on the ground, kicking the first zombie and slicing two others with a swing of the chain. The others notice his presence and pause for a second before rushing toward him. But with another spin of the chain, he lashes everyone's legs. Another zombie tries to attack him from behind but gets a kick to the stomach. That chain is sharper than a katana. 3 more zombies come running from behind, and he performs the famous helicopter move. Moments later, blood is dripping. He had managed to clear the entire street. However, just as he begins to curse the monsters, the ground starts to tremble. He wonders why an earthquake suddenly started in his nightmare. That's when the asphalt nearby begins to break apart, and from the ground emerges a massive fleshy, hairy, toothy worm. What is this? The creature roars at the boy, who looks like he can't believe what he's seeing. In the next moment, it seems like he's been eaten. The mission fails with him dying once again. Suddenly, he wakes up in bed, saying this is way too unfair. Some time passes, and he tells the woman in front of him that he wrote down everything that happened in the nightmare last night. She says he's already written it down 99 times and feels like just yesterday he came here for the first time, completely drained. This is his psychiatrist named Choi Ne. The protagonist, thoughtful, says that 2 years ago, this nightmare started out of nowhere. Constant deaths of vulnerable people, including himself, kept repeating. Every day he would wake up in the middle of the night terrified. And of course, over time, it started to ruin his life. Having this kind of dream every night was killing him psychologically and physically. And that was the reason he started seeing a psychiatrist. Choi Ne asks him to sit down and inquires if he's there because of nightmares. A skeletal-looking young man says yes, and she asks him to explain more about what they're like. He responds that they're about zombies. That was the day his treatment began. Counseling sessions, hypnosis, and even medications. But even so, the nightmares wouldn't stop, and he kept waking up screaming. One day, she asked if the nightmares were always the same. She handed him a notebook and said that if the dreams were always the same, he could try making a different decision. She wanted him to write everything down, and she would think about what he could do. The protagonist was a bit confused about focusing so much on the nightmares. But she said that this was just the first step, and later, they would decide how to handle the rest. She handed him a pen and told him to write everything down from now on. Once again in the nightmare, he gets eaten alive. And he remembers that when he talked about this situation, she asked if there wasn't a warehouse nearby or something like that. He said yes and decided to follow her advice. He runs to a nearby warehouse and starts looking for a weapon. Grabs a crowbar and runs toward a zombie. Hits it on the head, and it goes down. Finally, he had managed to fight back in his own dream. And that's how the nightmares began to change. Back in the present, Choi Ne says she's at her limit. She asks if he's really going to continue alone in the 100th dream. He says she knows as well as he does that humans are filthier than zombies. She says she's aware but insists there are good people out there. But he replies that good people no longer want to get involved with anyone. He takes a sip of his coffee and says that even though it's just a dream, he's seen 1 or 2 people die trying to help him. It's not like he has the power to protect others, and it only weighs on him. May realizes that the dreams are so real to him that it feels like he truly lost allies. He then closes the book and says it's time to eat. They're supposed to go grab some soup, and she's paying. She even winks at him, telling him to hurry up. Later, they go to a convenience store. They're already there drinking soup, and she's commenting on how delicious it is. Our guy is smiling. Then he hears someone yelling, asking what's going on. He looks to the side and sees a man in a green shirt arguing with the cashier. The man is shouting, asking why the cashier is standing still instead of letting him pay. The guy keeps yelling, demanding the cashier accept the payment. But the protagonist's expression changes, and he seems scared. He didn't want to believe what he was seeing. When he turns, Naya asks what's wrong, and he says it's nothing. But the loudmouth in the green shirt keeps shouting, saying he'll miss his bus at this rate. Then the other person lunges and bites his neck, throws the man to the ground and starts devouring him. Amid the man's destruction, little by little we see the protagonist. He knew this was the nightmare that had been tormenting him all along. Dreams are dreams and reality is something entirely different. But now to him, they seem like the same thing. And worse, this wasn't just any dream. It was a terrifying nightmare. As he's panicking about the nightmare, the man is being devoured. The body rises as he cries for help. The protagonist doesn't react, and the attacker slowly rises from the corpse. It looks at him and jumps immediately. He probably thought the attacker was going after him, because he was still sitting, unable to react. Outside, there was a crowd of people begging to be saved as they were eaten alive. Everyone was trying to escape, and the nightmare had begun. He tries to stay calm and not move, but his hand starts clutching his pants and he doesn't know what to do, sweating profusely. He was hoping it would somehow pass and be some kind of illusion. But as soon as the cashier finishes eating the man, it looks at the boy. Now he knows this isn't just a dream. The zombie screams and charges at him from behind. With no options or weapons, he grabs a pot from the table and smashes it on the zombie's head. But he knows full well that isn't enough. He runs to the side, looking for another weapon, finds a broom and breaks the handle. At least now he had a chance. The problem is, the zombie had already lunged and was too close for him to use the stick. As it's about to bite him, he manages to duck and dodge the attack. The creature snaps its jaws at empty air. He grips the weapon, it's a foothold on the ground, and throws himself at the zombie. Jams the stick straight into the monster's neck. With that, he scored his first kill in the real world, and the creature fell to the floor. Looking at the monster, he wonders if it's because of the countless nightmares. The moment he accepted this as reality, his mind calmed down. That's when Choi-Ne calls his name, Jerem, and asks if he really killed someone. But he just sighs, and asks if she's not seeing what's happening outside. That horde of creatures was moving corpses. Or in other words, they were all zombies. Ne seems unable to believe what he's saying, but he has already accepted the entire reality and states that what he wrote down has become real. At that moment, an explosion happens. Jerem recalls the timing of the explosion and its connection to his dream. It always happened at the gas station. Ne turns around and now there's no doubt. Everything that happened in the dream had become reality, which means this artisan village will soon be completely destroyed. By nightfall, this place will already be overrun by monsters. The problem is, it's not just this village. In the early dreams, he didn't even make it out of Korea, which was completely destroyed. By the 20th dream, he reached China, which was also destroyed, and the United States and every other city. In all 99 nightmares, humanity was defeated. That's because the zombies grew stronger every day, while human civilization, unable to adapt, was slowly wiped out. Seeing the gas station explode in front of him, he already knows what the future holds. He desperately needs to survive. That's when he hears a sound beside him. Slowly, he turns his head, and what he sees leaves him shocked. The mission system had appeared. Kill all the zombies on Earth, and the reward was to restore everything. The same window with the same message. The one that kept repeating in the nightmare. He tries to pass his hand through it, not quite understanding what it is. It was fine appearing in dreams, but it was strange that this was now happening in reality. Or rather, the mission's content had indeed changed. The mission was now about the Great Guardian. He had to protect Professor Choi-Ne at his home. The system was sneaky. Still startled, the protagonist tries to calm himself for a second. At least he had lived through this 99 times. Asking himself why this was happening wouldn't change anything. Then he notices something in the system's window. There was a section about skills. Suddenly, the window updates and asks if he will accept the challenge. At that moment, he knew this was the mission, and he had never succeeded in it. But at the same time, he felt a strange sensation. He sensed that with any choice, he had the chance to change this desperate future. Ne then asks what's wrong and if he's okay. He says yes, and that he just felt a little off. She smiles and says that's a relief. But the protagonist sees her completely transformed into a zombie. With that, his smile fades. There was something he had never had the courage to write in his notes. The professor gets bitten and falls to the ground. She then rises and transforms into a zombie. But she didn't need to know that now, and he was determined to change the future. Until something explodes behind him. When he looks back, there's a dozen zombies approaching. He gets startled, turns to Ne, and tells her to run. With that, the two of them are already outside the convenience store. But the street is full of zombies who notice their presence. They both run through the creatures while she carries the notes. They run to the warehouse from his dream, and he manages to open it. As soon as they enter, he closes the door and bars it with a metal rod. Finally, he calms down for a moment. He goes toward one of the cabinets while outside the zombies are pounding away. He stops in front of a locker, and Choi-Ne wonders what Jerem is doing. What he grabs is the legendary chain. He tells her to prepare because he's going to kill everything on the way to his house. Before she can understand what he means, he pulls the latch and opens the door. Just as expected, the outside is filled with zombies. They immediately react to his presence. But Jerem grabs the chain and gets ready. He had to complete this mission to receive the transmission skill. His expression changes completely. The first zombies rush toward him and begin to surround him from all sides. But with the chain, the boy is experienced and prepares the helicopter move. The first zombie approaches and takes a blow to the forehead. Ne is inside watching all of this. Meanwhile, Jerem swings the chain back and forth, hitting everyone like Kurapika from Hunter x Hunter. And boy, when it hits, it hurts. Zombies fall to the ground as he advances toward the rest. With the chains wrapped around his arms, motivated, he lets out a shout. The sensation of being surrounded and spinning the chains felt very familiar to him. Ne, watching from inside, remembers asking him why he chose chains as a weapon. The question left him a little surprised, but now it made sense. Seeing him eliminate several zombies around him, she recalls that at the start of the dreams, he always talked about the chains too. A weapon with flexible attack range and far more durable than any knife. It didn't mean to be sharp, just strong. Suddenly, one of the zombies approaches from behind. The protagonist turns and manages to make it bite the chains. He immobilizes the creature and tells it to bite harder. Then he yanks the chain to the side, destroying its teeth and hitting it in the face. With the creature still in the air, he strikes again, slashing through its chest. Ne watches from afar as another zombie sneaks up from behind. Jerem switches the chain's direction and uses his foot to kick it forward. She realizes the weapon was extremely versatile in attack direction. As soon as he was above the zombie, he pulled downward, hitting it square on the head. Another one down. And boy, he doesn't stop, already advancing toward the next group. Chains on his arms, shouting while Nei watches helplessly. Before long, he's on top of a pile of bodies. But it's not enough as another horde is coming their way. He looks at Nei and says this is their only chance to run. With that, both are fleeing through the street. The scene then shifts to a forest. In the middle of it, there's a small, isolated house. Jerem and Nei had just arrived there. He says it's a good place, deserted, with no zombies nearby. As soon as he enters, however, she falls to her knees. He asks what's wrong, and she says she's fine. She just feels very relieved. He helps her up and tells her to sit on the couch. She sits, and at that moment, the system window appears. The mission was complete, and he receives the transmission skill. He's immediately excited to see what it does. The transmission skill allows him to receive a skill from an expert. Now he's completely confused because in reality, the skill doesn't do anything. First, he had to figure out what this expert thing was all about. But it couldn't be that the clues were so vague that he had no idea what to do. The system then explains that if someone views him favorably, he can learn a transmission skill from that person. Obviously, he has no clue what this means but decides to test it. He activates the transmission on Nei. Suddenly, a magical circle forms above and below both of them. He looks surprised, but on the other hand, she doesn't seem to be reacting at all. This clearly indicated that she couldn't see anything. However, the system congratulates him, saying he has acquired a skill. Clearly, it was related to her profession, but for him, it wasn't very useful. Nei then lights a cigarette and calls out to him. She asks if those monsters were the zombies from his dreams. She remembers him writing something very similar in that book. Now she wants to know what's happening or if she's also started having a nightmare. Jerem realizes she's panicking. She's relieved to have survived, but is beginning to mentally break down. For him, though, this was all too common since these were scenes he had experienced repeatedly in his dreams. It was the perfect moment for him to use the skill he just gained. He activates mental care. A magical circle appears beneath both of them, and the system announces that the skill has been successfully used. The person's spirit had been strengthened. Suddenly, Nei, who had her hand on her face, takes the cigarette and puts it out in the cup. She smiles at Jerem and says that at least they're both alive, so it's not all bad. They need to cheer up because she's sure the world will get better. Jerem is impressed. The transmission skill really worked. That's when he remembers the artisans and craftsmen from the village where he lived. There were countless professionals there with a lifetime of experience. What if he could bring all of that to himself? The next goal was to learn skills from those people. The scene shifts to the gas station that had exploded. We see a buff man, now a zombie, a martial arts master known as Park Dalbom. The next chapter begins with him talking about how, a few months ago, he had 10 nightmares in a row. He was exhausted when someone called out to him. Turning around, he asked what the elders wanted. An old man in a suit named Youngchun asks if the nightmares happened again, judging by his face. Dalbong says it's his fault for not having enough energy. The elder remarks that the boy is lucky he had some ginseng at home, so he should go eat it. Jerem, tired, says it's okay since ginseng like that is very expensive. But Dalbong insists, saying he should just eat it because health is what matters most. The poor protagonist looks awful when he's skinny. Back at the house, he's starting up his scooter. He's ready to leave when Nei opens the door and asks if he's lost his mind. What's he thinking? Heading into the middle of the city? How does he plan to kill all the zombies? Jerem asks if she didn't see how he handled the creatures. It's just a few zombies, he won't be defeated. She puts a hand to her head and says it seems there's no changing his mind. After some thought, she at least asks him to be careful, but warns that if he gets bitten anywhere, she won't open the door for him. He tells her not to worry since he hasn't been bitten since all of this began. She snaps at him to shut up and stop saying those death flag lines. He laughs, starts up the scooter, and gets ready. He's sure the two elders must be together as always, and he needs to save them both. With that, he speeds off, leaving Nei behind. She lights another cigarette and thinks she made the worst decision trying to quit smoking this year. The scene shifts to the city, which is, of course, overrun with zombies. We're inside an office in the village of Jangwon. There are zombies everywhere, walking around. Behind the counter, a small bald man is trembling. It's Youngchun, who doesn't know what to do. A zombie wandering nearby spots the trembling man behind the desk. The poor old man freezes, waiting for death to come. Then he hears a noise. Slowly, he opens his eyes to see someone had punched the zombie in the face. It's Park Dalbong, who asks if he's okay. The old man looks a little embarrassed, but seems happy to see him. But just then, more zombies appear at the door. Dalbong faces them and tells the old man to wait a little longer. They'll clean up everything quickly. The zombies rush toward him. But this is a true martial artist. He just takes his stance and delivers a one-punch blow. Meanwhile, Jerem speeds along on his scooter. He knows Dalbong is a martial arts master, so regular zombies are no problem for him. The issue is that the elders always died in his dreams. He has to reach them because of two critical variables. All he hopes is that he doesn't arrive too late. The zombies keep advancing and Dalbong is handing out punches to all of them. One punch from the guy sends a zombie flying. He smashes one in the head and another in the face. Youngchun, trembling behind the desk, is impressed. Dalbong jokes that he wishes he could have learned some of the martial arts from the Joseon dynasty, but the musclehead laughs. He says it's a shame, but regular people can't learn the celestial demon's art. He crushes the zombie remains and says only the strong like him can master those martial arts. Youngchun responds that he understands, but it's a pity since he always wished he'd been born with a strong body. Then they hear a noise nearby. A heavy footstep and a creature that looks like an uglier version of Attack on Titan 2.0 approaches. The problem is the monster's height. Dalbong estimates it to be between 2.5 and 3 meters tall. A zombie walks past the giant, who grabs its head. Opening its huge mouth straight out of Attack on Titan, it chomps down. The elders are baffled. The zombie was eating other zombies. It devours everything and even lets out a burp. But Dalbong looks excited, saying that an interesting target has appeared. He disappears in a blur and goes to punch the giant in the face. With his fist pulled back, he activates the double tiger energy strike. A barrage of punches known as the Tiger's Dance rains down on the creature. It keeps shouting and hitting the monster relentlessly, but the creature starts roaring, seemingly unaffected. Dalbong doesn't understand how the monster is retaliating even while taking such a beating. The beast lunges at him, but he manages to hold his hands. The problem is the monster begins applying force and Dalbong seems unable to overpower it. He quickly realizes he might not be a match for this thing. With a strained face, some of his vertebrae give way. He falls to the ground, clutching his back as Youngchun calls out to him. Poor Dalbong, his herniated disc acted up. The zombie, indifferent, moves in for the kill. But our Kurapika, or rather Jerem, lands a blow with his chain, smacking the zombie's face and leaving it stunned. Jerem announces he's there to save them. The two elders look at him, wondering what the kid is doing there. Jerem, knowing about Dalbong's herniated disc, suspected he wouldn't win. He tells the elders to escape before it's too late. The second variable was this giant mutant zombie. Youngchun, terrified, stares at the scene. Suddenly, he runs, picks up Dalbong, and tries to flee with him. Dalbong apologizes for not being able to do more as they begin to leave. But the giant zombie roars again, startling Jerem. He ducks, dodging the first strike, as Dalbong yells at him to run. But Jerem tells them not to worry. After all, the scooter only has 2 seats, so he couldn't go with them. Meanwhile, zombies begin surrounding the area. The two elders are already on the scooter while Jerem stands face to face with the horde. Youngchun asks if he really has no other solution while Dalbong apologizes again. Jerem ignores them, spinning his chain. There are far more zombies than he anticipated, and he's unsure if he can win. But then he hears the system's sound. He has gained the favor of a master of the specialty, and a skill can now be passed to him. He immediately smiles, knowing what it is. The giant roars, and the zombies close in on him. Youngchun shouts Jerem's name as he stands still and simply says to activate the skill. Then he jumps, dodging the attacks. He mutters something about gathering energy from the province of Joseon. The buff monster looks confused, not understanding, until Jerem lands with both feet on its head, activating the Joseon realm. The explosion crushes the giant and sends the rest flying. Standing there in style, the elders are stunned. Jerem had learned the celestial demon's martial arts. At that moment, he unlocked martial evolution, though still at rank F. The next chapter begins with a tale about the strongest man in history. Known as the celestial demon, he crossed all of China. He returned to his homeland of Joseon long after. There, drawing energy from the land, he refined his martial arts. He finally achieved absolute strength, and this was the ability Jerem had just begun to unlock. The giant had been flattened. Still standing coolly, Jerem had his arms crossed. The elders hadn't even started the scooter and were left gaping. Dalbong had no idea how someone as skinny as Jerem could use such martial arts. Standing atop the zombie, he received another skill. It was the passive Joseon heart control, a skill that allowed him to sense mana. Jerem was thoroughly confused by this heart control and mana stuff. Then his status window appeared. Shin Jerem with 3 rank F skills. He began to wonder if this wasn't starting to feel like a game. That's when he noticed a strange blue light nearby. Looking down, he saw it emanating from his hand. The power flowing through his body made him feel lighter. Maybe this was what control over the flesh meant in the skill's description. Clearly, risking his life to save Dalbong had been well worth it. This skill was definitely going to help him a lot. He approaches the elders and says he's finished, and they can return together. But then something rises behind him. The monster, which had been flattened, was still alive. Jerem remarks that the creature's strength is just like in the dreams. It was time to try something different. He grabs the chain and asks if they can start a proper fight. The monster, irritated, swings a punch at him. He dodges as the elders shout for him to be careful. Once again, he tells them to get out of there and that he'll catch up soon. The elders hesitate, but he insists they go help Professor Choi, who's hiding at his house. With no choice, Youngchun agrees. He knew they were only holding Jerem back at this point. As they speed off, Youngchun calls out, saying Jerem has to survive. Jerem keeps spinning the chain while circling the monster. As the creature roars, he strikes again, landing a blow squarely on its head. The monster stumbles, but manages to grab the chain. Without hesitation, it breaks the chain, leaving Jerem fuming. He follows up with a knee strike straight to the skull. The zombie is hurting, but still alive. Jerem picks up the broken chain pieces, seemingly reforging them. He turns to the monster and asks if it knows the punishment for breaking other people's things. It's getting beaten to learn a lesson. The monster almost looks scared. Night falls and time passes. Nay is at home smoking as usual. It seems the apocalypse won't kill her, but the cigarettes might. She's worried about Jerem. Then she hears the sound of a motorcycle outside. Thinking it's him, she rushes to the door. But when she opens it, she finds the two elders instead. Confused, she listens as Youngchun explains that Jerem told them to come here and meet Professor Choi. She's relieved they found Jerem, recalling how he said he was going to save them. But she wants to know where that kid is so she can scold him for doing something so reckless. Youngchun hesitates before speaking, but both elders eventually admit that Jerem stayed behind. Nay doesn't believe it. Youngchun adjusts his glasses and says he doesn't understand why, but the young man sacrificed himself to save two old men. He stayed back, fighting that zombie alone. Back in the city, the monster is getting its face whipped. Jerem lands another punch, following up with a sequence of strikes to its stomach. He delivers a kick under its chin, sending it crashing to the ground. He calls it nothing but a punching bag. But now that his chain is broken, he'll have to learn how to use this thing called mana. As thanks for forcing him to learn, he'll send the monster to hell painlessly. The creature, despite the beating, charges at him again with jaws wide open. Jerem stands still, channeling mana into his arm. He remembers the instructions. Let it gather and release it all in a single blow. His punch creates a crater in the zombie. The impact shakes the ground, and finally, the creature is split in two. Jerem's hand aches from the force. That's when the crystal on the monster's back detaches. Noticing it, he approaches, unsure of what it is. The system explains that it's a red magic stone, a growth accelerator. Using it would level him up. Naturally, Jerem is thrilled with the news. The next chapter opens with an official announcement from the Ministry of Defense. The message describes a large-scale incident spreading across the country. It urges people to stay home and safe. It reiterates that this is a declaration of a national disaster. Meanwhile, Dalbong notices something. Jerem is at the door, knocking and asking to be let in. Everyone smiles upon hearing his voice and opens the door. Jerem grins, relieved that both elders made it back safely. But Nay is furious, calling him an idiot for worrying so much about others. She asks how he's feeling and whether he was bitten. Dalbong looks around nervously while Jerem assures her he didn't get bitten. Youngchun proudly declares that Jerem's efforts to save two old men were remarkable. He commends Jerem for doing such a great job and thanks him. Jerem, a little embarrassed, says it was no big deal. Then the system chimes in, announcing that another expert had shown him favor. He could now learn wooden architecture rank F from Youngchun. Without hesitation, Jerem activates the transmission. The circle forms and the skill transfer works perfectly. With this new skill, Jerem could now use mana to construct wooden structures. Dalbong speaks up, saying he has a question. How did Jerem learn the celestial demon's martial arts when he had never taught him? Jerem looks a bit embarrassed, but he's not one for secrets and immediately admits that it's his skill. The elders are stunned into silence, while Nay wonders aloud if he's talking about some kind of game skill. Jerem opens his palm and activates wooden architecture. The elders hear a rumbling from the ground and wonder if it's an earthquake. Suddenly, a log bursts out of the ground, followed by another, forming a pillar. The elders are startled as more wooden beams rise, creating a sequence. Jerem seems to be building a wall from scratch. Though the wall is small, just encircling the house, it's incredibly sturdy. Everyone stares in awe, trying to comprehend what just happened. Youngchun rushes to the wood, touching it. As an arborist, he's perplexed. He's never seen wood like this. It's almost as firm as metal. Jerem asks what they think and explains that it's his skill, wooden architecture, which he learned from Youngchun. Youngchun is confused, insisting he never taught Jerem anything. Jerem explains that it's due to the skill transfer system he received. Dalbong starts to piece things together, realizing how Jerem learned the celestial demon's martial arts. He falls silent, staring at the boy. Memories of his past surface when he tried to teach the art to many disciples. No one ever progressed beyond the introductory stage. This technique could only be learned by a natural genius. He recalls the first time he met someone with innate talent, a 5-year-old girl named Park Izio. 18 years of training turned her into the next successor. But even she, now fully grown, couldn't display the destructive power Jerem just showed. Dalbong acknowledges that Jerem might truly be a genius. If anyone could save the world, it was him. At that moment, the system alerts Jerem that he has no mana left due to excessive skill usage. Sweating profusely, he struggles to stay conscious. He stumbles, swaying on his feet. Nay asks if he's okay, but he collapses face first onto the ground. The elders shout his name and rush to help him. Glancing at his status window, Jerem sees his MP bar is empty. The system informs him that he'll enter forced rest to recover mana. Jerem hadn't expected such a consequence. Sometime later, he opens his eyes and sits up. Looking around, he realizes he's in his room. The system announces his mana has been restored. It explains that sleeping recovers even more mana. Jerem reflects that using skills isn't always the best or most convenient option. If he runs out of mana mid-fight, he could pass out and get eaten while unconscious. Just then, Nay enters the room, smiling when she sees he's awake. She says she was worried about him, and he apologizes for overusing his skills. She chuckles, saying she figured, considering he made a forest sprout out of nowhere. But if he's feeling better, she invites him outside because dinner is ready. Under the moonlight, they're hosting a barbecue. The elders are happily eating. Outside, zombies are banging on the wooden wall, slowly gathering in numbers. Jerem doesn't seem too thrilled. Dalbong, however, is celebrating, saying the star of the show has arrived. Jerem asks what he means. Dalbong explains that he's grilling pork belly for their hero, but Jerem finds it odd to eat outside with zombies pounding at the walls. Nongshun reassures him, saying the wood is as hard as steel. These zombies could get all they wanted, and it wouldn't break. Even with a lifetime studying wood, he's never seen a barricade this perfect. Jerem reluctantly sits down, trusting their words. May pops open a beer and says that in an apocalypse, she has to enjoy life more. They sit, talking and eating. Jerem begins to feel something different. This was nothing like the 99 nightmares he had lived through. In those dreams, life amidst the zombie-infested world was hell every day. But now, with good food and friends, it felt different. For a moment, the terrifying world seemed like a relaxing place. At least for now. Because in the next scene, chaos erupts elsewhere. A soldier is shouting for the troops to advance and not stop. Zombies swarm toward them, while one of the soldiers radios for backup. The main defensive line is on the verge of collapse. Another massive horde of zombies, numbering over 1,000, is approaching rapidly. And the target of this attack, the artisan's village. The enormous zombie in the distance had a horrifyingly long tongue, but at least there was a massive crystal embedded in its forehead. It looked like it could grant a ton of levels. The next morning at 7 a.m., Jaren wakes up. The system rewards him for saving 3 people on the first night. He receives the rank F analysis skill, allowing him to use mana to view information about a target. Surprised, he realizes he didn't even know secret missions existed. Then he hears someone counting from 1 to 3 nearby. Looking outside, he sees the 2 elders practicing. A skill is always a good thing, so he decides to test it. Activating analysis, he examines Yangchun. The system reveals he's a 78-year-old human with no rank, a skilled carpenter, but some information is hidden. Dalbong is 73, also a rankless human, but it shows he has mastered the celestial demon's martial arts. Choi Ning is a 34-year-old rankless human and a psychiatrist. Jerem is puzzled by this rankless human designation. To him, skills like wooden architecture and analysis don't seem as exciting as the celestial demon's martial arts. He then glances at the TV and the couch, both labeled as unclassified items. It dawns on him that analysis can be used on anything. He examines the red crystal, wondering if it could locate more significant things. As he stares at it, Ney approaches and asks if it's some sort of treasure. He explains that he obtained it during his fight in the city, and that it's a kind of catalyst. She, confused, asks what it does. He compares it to an experience potion from a game. She then questions why he's staring at it instead of consuming it. Jerem explains he's trying to figure out the best way to use it for maximum advantage. Deciding on a plan, he tells her he's going out for a bit. Ney immediately objects, reminding him he collapsed not long ago. But Jerem, helmet on, mounts his motorcycle and says there's something he needs to confirm. With that, he speeds off, leaving her frustrated. Back in the ruined village, zombies react to Jerem's approach. They charge at him, but he's running out of patience. He swings his chain, smacking zombies left and right without even stepping off his bike. Still, Jerem knows the true crisis of the village hasn't begun yet. He recalls his past life when that giant monster stood atop a pile of corpses, with more grotesque creatures leading the charge. There was utter despair, and he remembers looking down as another nightmare ended in death. But now, taking off his helmet, he declares it's going to be different. An explosion echoes, and Jaren realizes the monsters have already arrived. Wrapping the chain around his arm, he heads into the forest, knowing it's the first obstacle. But it's not going to be easy. A zombie lunges at him, and Jerem delivers a punch enhanced by the chain. Meanwhile, on the road, soldiers have set up a barricade, waiting for the monsters to approach. One soldier jokes that capturing the black monster alive would get him a promotion. He orders everyone to remember the priority: capture the black monster alive. Suddenly, someone shouts that the zombies are crossing the bridge. The soldier smiles, saying it's time to unleash hell and empty their ammo. Gunfire erupts as zombies rush for the barricade. The soldier confidently remarks that if the zombies can't handle their bullets, they definitely won't survive the tank's firepower. But then a shadow falls over him. He hadn't noticed something descending from the sky. The massive monster crashes down, crushing the tanks. The beast roars as soldiers fire their machine guns, shouting for it to die. But nothing seems to hurt it. Someone orders the crew to use the tank's main weapon. The monster keeps advancing, flipping tanks aside like toys. It grabs one with its jaws, biting down before tossing it into the air. The soldiers panic, with their leader yelling for a retreat to the second barricade. But amidst the chaos, a massive horde of grotesque zombies appears, overwhelming them. One of the soldiers pleads for help, but Jerem, still in the forest, is observing from the bushes. He watches as the second barricade collapses faster than he expected. This wasn't like his dreams. The number of creatures had doubled from 5 to 10. The most crucial thing, however, was the giant creature with the crystal on its forehead. Jerem activates analysis and examines it. Whatever he sees makes him mutter that he's tired of taking it easy. The scene shifts to Jerem speeding his motorcycle back toward the town. He estimates there are around 500 creatures in the area. The celestial demon's martial arts are powerful but consume a lot of mana. He realizes he has no choice but to use them. Every summer, the artisan's village holds a fireworks festival for tourists. This year, the festival was supposed to happen tonight. Jerem knows there must still be some fireworks left. He heads to a boat, climbs aboard, and starts searching. Eventually, he finds the fireworks he's looking for. He also finds a walkie-talkie, which with some adjustments he can use. He just didn't expect to need all of this so soon. Night falls and the city is crawling with zombies as usual. Nearby, Jerem sprays himself with a strong scent on his face, his shirt, and anywhere else he can. Satisfied with the smell, he prepares to use the red magic stone. He places the chain on the ground and activates analysis. The system confirms that the chain is unclassified. Knowing that a good weapon is critical for dealing with a horde, he contemplates how to use the stone. Reading the crystal closer to the chain, he wonders if that's all it takes. The system pops up a window asking if he wants to strengthen the item. He selects yes, and suddenly, the chains glow with a red aura. After a brief flash of light, the strengthening is successful. The chains are now intact chains, a rank F item. They can conduct 15% of mana and come with a special skill, separation. Jerem is impressed by how much the weapon improved just by gaining a rank. When he picks them up, his mana flows through the chains, making them shine. Curious, he activates the separation skill. The chains transform into combat gauntlets. This strengthening stone was even better than he imagined. Suddenly, the ground trembles. What he was waiting for has arrived. At the village entrance, creatures begin appearing. The long-tongued monster destroys a flag and roars. The zombies start running toward the town. Jerem observes from a rooftop, strategizing his next move. When most of the stronger zombies are in the main street, it's time for the fireworks. He presses a button on the walkie-talkie, activating the fireworks on the boat. Instead of attacking the zombies directly, he uses the fireworks as a distraction. A red explosion in the sky catches the attention of the big brute, who stands dumbfounded. Jerem sneaks up behind it, wraps the chain around its neck, and pulls hard. The brute struggles, but it's too late. Off with its head. With style, Jerem is framed by decorative explosions in the sky. As the body falls, the long-tongued creatures hear the commotion and attack Jerem. Remaining calm, he activates wooden architecture. A wall rises, Fortnite-style, blocking their path. The long-tongued zombies are confused, but not for long. Jerem strikes with the chain, smashing their heads. Blood splatters on the asphalt and 3 crystals fall. He quickly grabs the crystals and adds them to his weapon. The chain upgrades again, 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels. More zombies approach, but Jerem grins and taunts them to come at him. Swinging the chain like a helicopter, he mows them down. Meanwhile, the enormous monster watches the fireworks from outside the city. It stumbles around, smashing into a bar like an idiot before freezing in place. Suddenly, the creature sniffs something in the air. In a single bound, it leaps into the main street. It notices the carnage, zombies lying dead and Jerem at the center, taking them all down. The monster roars and Jerem, unfazed, remarks that it arrived at the perfect time. He pulls out another crystal and strengthens the chain 5 more times. The system warns that he has reached the limit of strengthening and asks if he wants to proceed. Jerem confirms, and the chains evolve into flame chains, a rank E item. He gains the special skill Firework Flame. Jerem, brimming with confidence, punches his fists together, activating the skill. Flames engulf his arms as he declares the festival has just begun. Elsewhere, a man sits in a small house. His name is Sebastian Kim, a 65-year-old professor of ideology, specializing in animal and human behavior. Petting a rabbit on his lap, he's interrupted when a crow lands beside him. Addressing the crow as Manhwa, he asks what's happened. The crow delivers a letter, which Sebastian praises it for bringing. The message warns of zombies overwhelming the village and advises him to stay alive. Sebastian seems excited that the sender is still alive and wonders if the conservation team is okay. He hopes they haven't all died. Then he sees the fireworks lighting up the sky. He wonders if a zombie could have caused this. The rabbit tugs at his leg, pointing towards something. Sebastian scolds it, telling him to stop urging him to go to that hellish place. But as he gazes at the scene, it reminds him of something. He recalls a past incident in the forest when something was watching him from the trees. It was that same strange flying rabbit, or was it a squirrel, that leaped onto his shoulder to warn him of danger. That's when he started running. On the first day of the incident, Sebastian had seen zombies attacking. If it weren't for his little friend's warning, he would have died. Now, if the creature is warning him again not to stay there, then once more, he will trust his instincts. Apparently, he's heading to the city. Back in the city, Jerem is face to face with the giant monster. The creature glares at him, stretching its long neck in his direction. But Jerem is cold and calculating. He sidesteps and lands a solid punch on its head. The firework flame ability works, and the beast crashes face first into the ground, catching fire instantly. It retreats for a moment, then turns back to Jerem. It opens its mouth and begins drawing in the air around it. But Jerem already knows the pattern of the venomous web attack. The monster does exactly as he predicted. He wonders if it's due to the analysis ability. Somehow, he instinctively knows how to counter this. The system alerts him that his mana injection has reached its limit. He activates the firework flame release. Jerem grins and throws a fiery punch. Fire beats web, and as Jerem says, that's just how it works. The attack surges forward, engulfing the monster in flames. Jerem smirks, saying that this bastard doesn't know who it messed with. The creature writhes in agony, and its grotesque fused heads make its suffering even more horrifying. Jerem notices it's considering escape. The monster turns, roaring that it will one day kill him. Suddenly, it pauses and lets out a deafening roar. All the zombies in the city respond immediately. Within seconds, Jerem is surrounded. Still calm, he asks if this is how it wants to fight. He combines the chains and spins them into a helicopter mode. Surrounded, he declares, "Let's play this game," and lashes out, taking down zombies left and right. If these creatures couldn't handle his weaker chains, they stood no chance against these upgraded ones, which sliced through them like lasers. From a distance, the giant monster watches Jerem fight. It takes the opportunity to leap toward him, nearly crushing him. Jerem dodges and manages to throw the chain, wrapping it around both of the creature's legs. He pulls hard, taunting the monster. "Trash like you is nothing to me." With another tug, the monster loses some of its limbs. The creature writhes in pain, and Jerem hopes this time it finally stays down. The battlefield is littered with dead zombies, and the monster is burning. The scene shifts to Sebastian, who has just arrived in the city and finds this situation strange. Since leaving the village, he hasn't seen a single zombie. Then an explosion goes off nearby. He realizes something dangerous is happening. Although he doesn't want to go, his little friend insists this is the way. He runs, wondering if it might be the military. But when he arrives, he's stunned. The massive monster lies dead, with Jerem standing atop it. Sebastian approaches and asks who the soldier is. Jerem turns around and recognizes Professor Sebastian Kim. Sebastian is shocked to see it's Jerem and asks if he's the one responsible for all this. Embarrassed, Jerem admits that he's been fighting the zombies and asks why Sebastian is here. Sebastian ignores the question, incredulous that Jerem killed so many zombies. Pointing at the giant, he demands to know how Jerem managed it. Suddenly, Sebastian's albino squirrel makes a noise and he asks what's wrong. Looking up, both he and Jerem are startled. It looks like a dinosaur-era meteor is hurtling toward the Earth. Jerem runs to his motorcycle, shouting for Professor Kim to move. Thankfully, the meteor seems to be in slow motion, giving them time to escape. But the meteor appears to be targeting them specifically. As Jerem accelerates, he mutters to himself that nothing like this ever happened in the dreams. The meteor crashes into the city, throwing both of them from the bike. Jerem lands headfirst but manages to stand, realizing the meteor has brought hordes of zombies. The creatures rise from the black and red substance covering the ground. Standing at the edge of the crater, Jerem sees the creatures climbing out. A swarm rushes at him, and he activates his chains once more. Using analysis, the system reveals that these are corrupted zombies, altered by something strange. The system notes they are far more resilient, something Jerem never encountered in his dreams. He strikes one on the head, but his physical attacks are no longer as effective. To make matters worse, the strange black and red growth begins to spread wherever he strikes. He notices the zombies are resistant to fire. One lunges at him from behind, and he strikes its arm, tearing it off. But moments later, it regenerates. As he suspected, these purple-tinged zombies regenerate far faster than normal ones. The only good news is that they seem confined to this bizarre moss-like substance. Sebastian rises, trying to make sense of the chaos. Meanwhile, Jerem realizes he's gathered enough information and decides it's time to retreat. He tells Sebastian the situation is critical and suggests they head to his home for now. Sometime later, they arrive at Jerem's base. The professor is impressed that they've already set up all the barricades. He congratulates them, saying they seem to be handling things quite well. As Jerem approaches the door, he notices the durability of the barricade has dropped from 9 to 10. However, it still seems sturdy as ever. Someone inside asks who it is, and Jerem replies it's him. Yangshun opens the door, relieved that Jerem is safe. Jerem asks if everyone is awake, and they explain they were woken up by the fireworks. Good to know that if Jerem had died, they'd have slept through it all. Amazing. The elders greet each other, and Yangshun is thrilled that Sebastian is alive. Jerem cuts in, saying they can catch up later. First, he needs to tell them about the strange meteor that fell. The 5 of them gather in the living room, or rather 6, since there's a sneaky little one. Nay remarks that all she understands is that the village has become a horrible place. Yangshun expresses concern for the survivors, worrying they might be running out of food. Sebastian, however, says there's unfortunately no solution for that. He accidentally throws in an English phrase mid-sentence. Dalbong scolds him to speak in Korean. Sebastian then asks if anyone remembers the crows. Dalbong says he does and suggests they could use them to deliver food to people. The crows were intelligent enough that it might work. However, Sebastian points out the problem. The crows are still at his house, which is likely full of zombies. Jerem knows that having such a resource would drastically reduce the time needed for rescues. Yangshun raises the issue of how they'll even reach the crows since they can't fly. Jerem starts brainstorming solutions. To succeed, he'll need a major upgrade. He has 4 magic stones, which he could use to strengthen his weapon. The issue is, he doesn't know how many it would take to advance his weapon's specialization. Alternatively, he considers another option, using the stones on the 4 others. Jerem tells the group that he'll need their help. Outside, each person holds a stone. Dalbong asks if they also see floating letters. Everyone confirms they're seeing something resembling a game interface. Jerem explains that the stones can awaken special abilities like the ones he has. Sebastian acknowledges the value of the stones and asks if Jerem is sure about sharing them. Jerem confidently replies that it's the best option and urges them to use the stones. The group stares at the stones in their hands as they begin to glow. The stones dissolve and a red energy surrounds them. Dalbong receives the innate ability of the celestial demon martial arts of Jojin. His technique has advanced and he can now sense mana. He lets out a shout as energy floods his body. The bandages on his body unravel and he prepares a punch, slamming the ground with a burst of power. Striking a double biceps pose, he declares his body is brimming with strength. Then his herniated disc flares up again. Dalbong winces and Jerem asks if he's okay. Dalbong admits, unfortunately, the stone can't cure his worst problem. Meanwhile, Youngchun is on the ground constructing a Japanese-style house. He has gained the innate ability of wooden architecture. The house disassembles, forming pillars, structures, and even a small city and army. Youngchun is thrilled, calling it fun and fascinating. Jerem is shocked, having no idea his abilities could be used this way. Turning to Ney, he asks about her ability. She seems embarrassed and explains that her ability lets her see people's emotions. She knows Dalbong is feeling 0.4 embarrassment and 0.7 sadness. Looking at Jerem, she sees 0.2 happiness and 0.6 embarrassment. She decides to test something and steps closer, activating mental care. When she touches Jerem, his happiness increases while his sadness decreases. Jerem comments that he feels comfortable. May excitedly remarks that these innate abilities are fascinating. Jerem notices no one mentions Han or anything similar to his abilities. Perhaps there's something different about what he possesses. Sebastian suddenly shouts, saying he's found the answer. He points upward and Jerem looks confused. Sebastian explains that if they can't go by land because of the monsters, they need to go by air. While it makes sense, no one has any idea how to make it happen. The next day, the house is surrounded by a massive wall. Youngchun has been using his abilities much more efficiently, improving everything. Jerem is surprised to see plants growing on the wall. It turns out Youngchun has created a small forest of trees. Relaxing, Youngchun announces that the basic construction is finally complete. Suddenly, there's a loud impact. Jerem is training with Dalbong and it looks like they're upside down. Indeed, they're fighting while inverted, having grown accustomed to it. They're sparring this way to practice channeling mana through their feet. Facing Dalbong isn't easy, as the Elder is thrilled and declares they're going to play some more. Dalbong activates the second form of the celestial demon martial arts, unleashing the tiger's dance again. Dalbong unleashes a barrage of attacks on Jerem, who realizes that at this pace he'll end up falling off. The Elder praises him for holding on well, but declares that this next attack will finish him. Jerem notices that Dalbong's strikes are getting faster and faster. Dalbong announces that he'll now add his heart to the next move. In response, Jerem channels mana through his legs, focusing it in his feet, and leaps toward the Elder. He nearly grabs Dalbong by the ear, but the Elder sidesteps. Jerem chases him, narrowly landing a kick. Dalbong is impressed by how ingenious this kid is. However, he grabs Jerem by the foot and exclaims, "That's how a disciple should be." In the middle of their sparring, someone calls out to Jerem. It's Sebastian, and he's already flying. Seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? But now the context becomes clear as Jerem mentions how much has changed in just 2 days. Hanging onto the wall, Dalbong comments, "Now this is what I call footwork." Jerem has been studying the celestial demon arts to the fullest. One notable development is that he maxed out favorability with Sebastian. Using transmission, he gained the rank animal communication ability. Hamiel, Sebastian's companion, hops off his shoulder and Jerem uses his ability on it. The system announces that Jerem successfully communicated with the creature and earned a special skill, Wingsuit. As he bites into a chocolate bar, Jerem tells Sebastian that it's time to go. Meanwhile, the city below is covered entirely in strange moss. Sebastian says they'll stick to the plan for now. Jerem activates wooden architecture beneath them, creating a pillar that rises skyward. The system warns him that the structure has reached its limit. From afar, the city can be seen, but Sebastian's house is on the other side. They jump off the pillar, activating their wingsuit abilities. With arms spread wide, they glide over the city. Jerem is relieved to see that the strange moss hasn't invaded the houses. But Sebastian points out something strange. The zombies seem to be carrying bodies. Jerem finds this odd, noticing that the creatures are tossing the bodies into a pile. One creature is clearly absorbing the bodies. As it finishes consuming them, the purple moss monster begins transferring its energy to another creature. Jerem watches in disbelief as a headless, armored, bloated monster emerges. He knows that eroded monsters affected by this substance are far tougher to deal with. His biggest fear is that the stalker from earlier may have undergone the same process. For now, they focus on their main objective. They arrive at Sebastian's house, where he celebrates seeing his crows alive. The crows rush, or rather fly, to him. Suddenly, Sebastian's demeanor changes as massive wings sprout from his back. Jerem is confused but finds it obvious. This is Sebastian's new power. The professor, feeling like a cherubic angel, starts flying and tells Jerem to follow him. Jerem complains that it's unfair Sebastian gets to fly alone. He channels mana to his feet, leaps, and begins gliding. On the ground, zombies look up, tracking their flight. The creatures activate strange mechanisms on their arms, attempting to grab them. The pair dodge, but one of the crows gets caught. At this rate, they're all bound to fall. Under heavy attack, Jerem tries to retaliate with his chain, but he loses his glide in the process. He starts running and Sebastian shouts after him. Jerem reassures Sebastian, saying he'll distract the zombies. The professor protests, but Jerem's determined look says it all. Activating Firework Flame, he charges into the fray. His fiery chain burns through the zombies as he declares he's ready to have some fun. Landing with explosive impact, the ground erupts in a fiery burst, sending zombies flying. But then he hears heavy footsteps behind him. The eroded armored monster, armed with a massive hammer, approaches. Jerem barely dodges the first strike and counters with a direct hit to its head, but nothing happens. With zombies closing in on all sides, Jerem channels mana into his feet and tries to escape, but the monster combines its arms to form a cannon. It grabs another zombie, loads it into the makeshift weapon, and fires. Jerem, in disbelief, dodges to the side just in time. The zombie projectile hits, causing a massive explosion. The blast attracts even more creatures from the distance. Desperate, Jerem knows he must escape as quickly as possible. Exhausted and low on mana, he eventually finds a building to hide in. The creatures are still nearby, and he knows he barely made it out alive. From his vantage point in the city, he notices something strange. One house appears to be untouched by the moss. He doesn't know if there's something special about the house, but he's determined to find out. The next scene shows Jerem standing in front of the gate, listening to a strange buzzing sound. He wonders if this might be the reason the monsters aren't approaching. Suddenly, a man appears on top of the gate, trembling all over. Jerem notices the man is anxious and activates mental care, asking if they can talk for a bit. He offers the man a protein bar, asking if he's hungry. The man opens the gate, and the next scene has them sitting in his living room. The man introduces himself as Ryu Dongtak, a professor of acoustics. Jerem introduces himself in return and asks about the zzz sound he keeps hearing. Ryu explains that it's strange because humans shouldn't be able to hear that frequency. He reveals he created a device that emits a low-frequency sound. That's why his house has remained safe. He offers to share the sound file with Jerem if he wants it. Jerem is thrilled, knowing this would be incredibly useful. Meanwhile, back at the base, Sebastian lands gracefully. Dalbon congratulates him on his new wings and immediately asks where Jerem is. Sebastian admits that during Jerem's attempt to save him, the boy fell into the village. Dalbon yells at him, demanding to know what the point of the wings is if he abandoned Jerem. Sebastian tries to explain that the zombies were stretching their limbs skyward. Youngshun appears and asks what's going on. Dalbon angrily tells him that Sebastian left Jerem to die. He's ready to storm off, saying he'll handle it himself. Youngshun warns him that he's lost his mind and should know that the village is hell. Dalbon, however, is fired up, declaring that he'll smash those bodies with his fists. Nate arrives, calm and composed, and tells Dalbon that while he might win against 1 or 2 zombies, what happens if the battle drags on? Youngshun agrees, reminding Dalbon not to forget about his back problems. Dalbon demands a better suggestion. Youngshun assures him that Jerem won't die so easily, but Dalbon is eager to act. Nate advises everyone to stay calm and think rationally in moments like these. She asks Sebastian if they can now deliver supplies using the crows. Sebastian confirms that the animals aren't attacked by zombies, so it might work. The group agrees to start by sending supplies and scouting the area. As Dalbon pointed out, they need a strong fighter for the mission. The task of going there must be entrusted to someone reliable. Sebastian insists there's no one suitable around, asking where they'll find such a person. Dalbon then suggests his granddaughter, Park Izio. At that moment, Izio kicks open the door, exuding a dangerous aura. Dalbon says she'll survive for sure and has likely already awakened her abilities. He guarantees she's reliable and skilled. May asks where they can find her. Dalbon replies that she's likely at the martial arts dojo in the city of Ananzan. Sebastian is impressed, asking if that's the same dojo often featured on TV. The scene shifts briefly to the dojo. Several bald men stand in front of a stern-looking woman with crossed arms. Sebastian calls for Mongmon, instructing the animals to find the girl in the photo. So what we saw earlier was just the photo. The animals fly off, even carrying some chocolate for her. Back at Ryu Dongtak's house, he asks Jerem if he's sure the supplies will arrive. Jerem points out that they're on the way. Moments later, the crows deliver protein bars and maps. Ryu is amazed that it actually worked, remarking that Jerem must have good companions back at the base. Apologizing for being a coward, Ryu asks if Jerem will accept him as an ally. Jerem, notoriously hard to convince or not, immediately welcomes him. With that, their favorability increases and the transmission skill is activated. Jerem uses his ability and both are surrounded by the familiar circle. The skill is successfully acquired. Jerem wonders if this might finally make escaping this place much easier. He received the rank F acoustic ability that allows him to use mana to insert sound into anything. With that, he grabs the chain and applies the magic. He prepares an attack and strikes the ground. I think it created more impact there, it seems, though I didn't quite understand. However, Jerem is excited, saying the ability is incredible. Dongtak asks if the sound he heard was the vibration of the chains, The boy confirms it, and Dongtak says it's an extremely strong technique. I'm still curious about what this will do, but our boy is confident that it will help them escape. Then they notice a kitten meowing in front of them. The little cat was thin and hiding under a car. Dongtak tells the boy to wait while he gets something for the cat to eat. He goes inside and quickly comes out with 2 small bowls ready to act. He places them in front of the kitten, who starts eating, and the little cat responds with some affectionate gestures. The kitten is all happy. Then he activates the animal communication ability. Because he sympathized with a stray cat named Terry, he would receive a special ability. With this, the ability he had that allowed his clothes to help him fly gets a modification with agile movement. He activates it immediately to see what it is, and suddenly his feet transform, looking like giant paws. He prepares for a second, and the next moment, Dongtak has no idea where the boy went. The boy reappears behind him, saying he's just over there. Dongtak is amazed that he already has another ability. Jerem confirms it and says it's one of the good ones, but now it was time to go. However, the chubby guy is scared and says that if they leave now, they'll only get in the way because the city is full of zombies. For now, all he wanted was to gather some supplies. Jerem knows it's safer to follow his suggestion since this place is immune to zombies. The guy apologizes for asking for resources, but the boy says it's fine because he has plenty saved up. Because of his apocalypse anxiety from his dreams, he had stocked up his warehouse. Dongtak thanks him and says he's counting on him. Our boy summons the crows and then leaves. With his cat-like feet, it seemed like the corrupted land wasn't reacting to him. And now it was time to use all of his new abilities to the fullest. In front of him were several zombies. He prepared the sound ability on the chain, saying he's tired of running from them. He ran toward them and activated the acoustic magic. Man, it seems like he now has full control of the chain because it hit the monster's forehead dead on. Even the eroded creatures couldn't resist anymore. The attacks that used to only dent their heads were now completely different. The zombies began to disintegrate on the ground, and unlike the others, these ones dropped crystals. However, as he approached to pick them up, tentacles appeared behind him. The attack headed toward the protagonist, but he turned and struck with the chain. I thought the creatures would resist, but it sliced through like butter again. The problem is that he's starting to get surrounded. He activates the cat's leap and jumps onto the wall. Seeing the horde of zombies, he knew it. That place was a treasure chest. He returned to the fight, activating the acoustic magic and lashed out with the chain. He even shouted "Atada Kamasu" as the zombies ran toward him. A long time passed and he was still there, whipping the tentacles with the chain. When he looked back, no more zombies were approaching, and there was a pile of crystals. It seemed like the treasure hunt was over. The system then rewarded him for completing a secret mission. He was the first person to hunt 10 infected zombies and received 10 kilograms of inventory. The bag appeared in his hand, and the system informed him that this was the inventory. Suddenly, the inventory jumps into his hand and lands near a crystal, starting to pull it in. This high-grade inventory begins collecting everything from the ground, so he won't even need to gather anything manually anymore. He smiles with that foolish grin, thinking how convenient this is, until his expression changes as he senses something strange. From the heavy vibe, he knows it's him. The hulking brute with the cannon begins to approach. Our boy pulls out the inventory and says it's time to use this. From it, a golden gem emerges, which he had obtained after defeating those earlier creatures. The system says this will upgrade his weapon and asks if he wants to use it. Obviously, he decides to strengthen it immediately. With that, the flame chain evolves into the rank D blue flame chain with the additional ability of the blue fire dragon. The monster prepares the cannon and points it at him. The shot is fired just as Jerem activates the blue dragon. He starts running toward the zombie. The dragon appears and charges at the zombie, piercing through the projectile. The headless monster doesn't understand why it didn't explode. Whoa, the dragon comes in and takes a bite out of it. Amidst all this, the chain wraps around the brute's arm as our boy gets closer. It looks like the arm is already gone. Whoa, from a distance, he made the monster lose both arms and the cannon. Apparently, the monster still managed to launch an attack. But Jerem sees it all and says it's way too slow. He activates the cat power in his feet and starts dodging while using the chain. It seems like the guy has infinite mana, right? He then notices that the monster's parts hitting the car are melting everything. Still, the big creature in front of him doesn't seem very alive. The monster stands still, and he asks if it's tired of screaming. But suddenly, the brute lets out a roar toward the sky. Strangely, the ground seems to be moving toward it, and the protagonist has no idea what's about to happen. As it absorbs the energy, its arms begin to regenerate, transforming into 2 blades. Now the monster's head opens up like a flower filled with teeth. My God, these creatures are hideous. It leaps toward the boy, who notices it has become much faster. He activates the chain to try to defend himself. But it was close. He almost got hit in the head. The impact is massive, and he's thrown backward. Meanwhile, the monster is coming in for a bite to his head. Our boy leaps with the cat's power. He says it's no wonder everything was coming so easily. Now he calls for the blue fire helicopter move. He knows the harder the challenge, the better the reward. The monster charges once more. Meanwhile, someone nearby is observing all of this. A man in a suit asks how many magic stones this boy must have collected by now. Someone from the military asks the man if he's trying to make the boy a target. The man scoffs, asking if he's scared. The soldier tries to explain that it's clear they would lose to the boy. It's better to ally with him. But the man in the suit argues that's exactly why they need to kill him. They can't let someone that strong roam free. It's also too risky to have him as an ally. After all, he could betray and kill them at any moment. Considering even the old man was giving out magic stones, imagine how many they'd get from killing this guy. That's when they hear a loud impact behind them. They take another look with binoculars, and through the smoke, they see the creature is dead. In the middle of its head is another one of those giant yellow crystals. The men have never seen a type other than the red one before. The suited man tells everyone this hunt is going to be massive. The protagonist stores yet another crystal in his inventory. The system notifies him that he's the first in the world to hunt a zombie mutant. The reward this time is the proclamation of an area. He could designate a region as his residence, and any allies that will receive some buffs. This is perfect for him since he has a base and is already eager to use it. Suddenly, someone appears behind him, saying he's late. Jerem recognizes him immediately and wonders what the psychopath Park Hunsum is doing here. We then see that in 2021, this man was honored as a young entrepreneur. He was an extremely successful man everyone considered a charity angel, but his true nature is entirely different. On the news, someone asks when the Gon serial killer case will be solved. Jerem knows very well that this man enjoys watching people die. That's because he saw him reveal his maniacal nature countless times in his nightmares. Several people are tied to wooden posts, and Park says today's society will be freed from the trash. The men cheer while the prisoners cry out, calling them cruel murderers. Park, however, responds that they should have followed the leader's orders if they didn't want this to happen. But one man spits at him, telling him to go to hell. Park wipes his face, asking what hell even is. Then he cuts the man and says that if such a thing exists, at least they'll live there first. He then orders everyone to kill anyone opposing the new era of governance. One of the poor prisoners is none other than a younger Jerem. Back in the present, Jerem hadn't imagined meeting this man here, but he considers himself lucky. Maybe it's the perfect time to gather some information. He then activates the analysis ability. As soon as he uses his analysis ability, he sees that the two other guys with Park are normal humans, except for one thing, they all have the human stone eater attribute. Jerem immediately understands that they're obtaining magic stones by killing people. Park raises his hand and tells Jerem not to be afraid, assuring him they're not there to cause trouble. In times like these, Park explains it's necessary to band together, and he asks if Jerem wants to join their group. Jerem is confused by this sudden invitation. Park elaborates that they're planning to take over a mall or some similar location to establish a base and recruit more people. Jerem questions if there are people already in those places and whether they're awakened individuals. Park says no, just a group of folks from some Chinese restaurants, so there's no need to worry. He even promises Jerem as much food as he wants. But then the ground starts to tremble. Everyone looks around confused, trying to figure out why there's an earthquake now. Then comes the system window. It only warns of danger, announcing that pursuit has begun. Jerem has no idea what this means. Suddenly, tentacles begin emerging from the ground. Zombies appear on both sides, surrounding the group. The soldier starts attacking while the guy with the bat panics, asking what's going on. Park orders everyone to retreat to their base. Jerem agrees and asks Park to lead the way. He swings his chain, clearing out most of the tentacles. This display unsettles the assassin. Still, Park feels confident that if Jerem lets his guard down, he can take him down. Park moves in another direction, telling Jerem to follow him. For now, Jerem decides to play along, curious to see how things unfold. At least this chaos might make it easier for him to escape. As he follows the cars, he makes a vow to himself. Park Hansum is going to die here. Up ahead, Park manages to kill a few zombies. The problem is, everyone notices that the horde isn't diminishing. Suddenly, someone tells the soldier to duck. It's Jerem who swings his chain, taking out the zombies ahead. Jerem scolds the soldier, telling him to wake up and use his spear properly. It seems like Jerem is the only one doing the heavy lifting. Now the others are starting to get scared. They're wondering how they'll ever defeat someone like him. Even Park realizes that one misstep could cost him everything. The way his comrades are reacting isn't a good sign. That's when Park suddenly activates his fear ability. A strange aura begins to spread from him, affecting the surrounding zombies. They freeze in place as a giant blue head appears, screaming. The zombies are disoriented and Park starts slaughtering them, always with that bizarre tongue sticking out. His allies praise him, saying it's what they expect from an awakened individual. With that, they decide to keep moving forward. The group progresses easily, clearing out the zombies. At least now Jerem has learned about Park's abilities. His powers are well suited for assassination, something valuable to know. A while later, they enter the mall. Everyone is exhausted, commenting on how close they were to dying. Park introduces himself formally, saying they don't know each other well yet. Jerem also shares his name but immediately asks about the cook from the restaurant. Park says it's fine and offers to take him to see the guy. They walk through the corridors until they stop in front of a door. Park explains that the person inside is a bit odd, so Jerem shouldn't be surprised. The door opens, revealing a man tied up on the floor, gagged. Jerem uses his analysis ability. The man's name is Sung Hammon, 30 years old with the ability to cook. Jerem notices that, unlike the others, this guy doesn't have the human stone eater ability. Park calls Jerem over, remarking that he doesn't seem very surprised. Jerem comments that they said the guy was odd, so he figured he might be tied up. But Park finds it strange how naturally Jerem is reacting. Park says he thought Jerem might misunderstand, which is why he explained earlier. Jerem then asks why Park tied the man up. Maybe he's useful in some way? The soldier agrees, but another guy questions what he means. Jerem says it's a waste to keep someone alive they're worth a magic stone. Park's expression changes instantly. He starts laughing, saying Jerem is remarkably honest when talking about killing. Jerem asks if it isn't entertaining. The lunatic beams, saying the world is too small to meet someone so similar to himself. What a twisted psycho. He killed insects, animals, he's unbearable. He recounts how even his family couldn't understand him. Gee, wonder why. That's why he decided to become an entrepreneur and mask his desires with wealth. But now in this apocalypse, he's met someone so similar to himself. Park confesses that, to be honest, he was planning to kill Jerem, but he can't bring himself to kill someone so much like him. He asks if Jerem wants to team up and live in a pleasant world together. Jerem knew Park would fall for the trap. He used a similar strategy in his nightmare and already knew Park loves having a murder buddy. Jerem shakes hands with Park, saying it's an honor to meet someone so similar to himself. As the favorability between them reaches the required level, Jerem gains the fear ability. Our boy thanks the system for granting him the skill via telepathic transmission. Obviously, this ability consumes mana to instill fear in others, a pretty complex skill. Park, curious, asks Jerem about his own abilities. Jerem lies, claiming his ability is just agile movement. Park recalls Jerem's evasive maneuvers and now understands what he was doing. However, Park also asks about the flaming chain. Jerem casually explains that it's just an ordinary chain strengthened with several magic stones. Park then inquires about the abilities of the others. The two claim they don't have any, unsurprisingly. But Jerem finds it hard to believe, especially since his system analysis revealed that the two had awakened. Still, considering the risks they faced and the fact that no one used any powers, maybe it's true. Perhaps ordinary people don't gain abilities even after awakening. That's when the guy with the bat calls everyone's attention. A group of large figures with gas masks is approaching. No one expected creatures to be able to leave the purple zone. Jerem realizes that if they've come this far, it's because they're searching for him. The two other guys, panicked, ask what they're supposed to do since they're trapped in this place. Park turns to Jerem, suggesting they join forces again because otherwise no one will survive. Taking the lead, Park says they'll clear the path like before. He activates fear once more. Damn, the guy is strong. He takes down one of the large creatures in a single strike. The others follow up, cutting and stabbing the creatures. Jerem has already gotten everything he wanted for the day. Now, step by step, he'll handle the most critical matters. A while later, they finally make it outside. The group, drenched in sweat, wonders aloud why the creatures entered that area. Park turns to Jerem, saying that together, they can escape. But suddenly, Jerem activates his wooden construction ability. Pillars rise, and he tells them to hold on tight. The clueless fools are all confused, asking what's going on. Park grabs a knife and slashes at the wood, calling Jerem a bastard. But the zombies are already closing in. The soldier warns there are too many zombies in the area. The guy in the beanie begs for someone to save them. Park keeps killing zombies, thinking it's a shame, but knowing he'll have to sacrifice these two pawns. At least they'll be useful for buying him some time. The two men realize too late that Park has killed a tentacle and Flood alone. The monster grabs them from behind. As Park runs, he assumes the useless ones are already dead. He finishes off another tentacle and tries to keep fleeing. But ahead, 4 more zombies block his path. Now with a defeated expression, he wonders if he's going to die here. He activates fear, shouting at the creatures to stop messing with him. He charges forward, managing to kill quite a few. He vows not to die until he gets revenge on that bastard. But then he's surrounded again, and one of the zombies grabs his arm. The other arm is also restrained, and his knife falls to the ground. Still, he swears he'll survive no matter what it takes. He stretches his hand, grabbing the zombie's head. Ripping off a chunk of the creature's face, he declares that he's willing to abandon his humanity to stay alive. Meanwhile, behind the wooden barrier, Jerem remains calm. He knows the barrier is buying him enough time. He heads to the back of the store to check on the tied-up man. Jerem unties him and tries to wake him up. But as soon as Hammond comes to, he flinches and begs to be spared. Jerem activates his mental care ability. However, he notices it's consuming a lot of mana, probably because Hammond is in extreme shock. Once again, Jerem asks if Hammond is okay. Hammond warns him to flee, saying this place is a nest of killers. There are over 10 bodies in the nearby boxes, making it dangerous to stay. Jerem calmly replies that he already knows and is here to rescue him. Confused, Hammond asks why Jerem is helping him when they don't even know each other. In a heroic tone, Jerem says he doesn't need a reason to help people. He hands Hammond a magic stone, telling him to use it. They'll need it to escape. But Hammond misinterprets the gesture. Remembering how Park once took a similar stone from a corpse, Hammond assumes Jerem might be a killer too. However, he notices that unlike the other stones, this one lacks a strange, malevolent aura. Before he can comment, Jerem explains that he got it by killing a zombie. Realizing that's why it's different, Hammond asks if it's really okay for him to have it. Before Jerem can reply, Hammond takes the stone, thanking him. The system prompts Hammond, asking if he wants to awaken. Feeling energy coursing through his body, Hammond wonders if this is what those other guys felt. Jerem helps him up and asks if he gained any abilities. Hammond confirms, saying he now has an innate ability to create meals that, when cooked with mana, have special effects. Jerem deduces that people with advanced abilities awaken new talents, while those who are unskilled remain ordinary. Now he just needs to use his transmission ability to acquire this skill too. He congratulates Hammond, and they formally introduce themselves. Jerem then tells him that before leaving, they'll need to prepare. Hammond immediately sets out to gather supplies. Jerem pulls out his inventory, knowing it's time to use his resources because otherwise he won't be able to defend Hammond. The collection he spreads out on the ground is impressive. His top priority is increasing his mana capacity since he has so many abilities. The system informs him that he can upgrade his transmission ability using an orange magic stone or spend 20 red stones to level up his analysis ability. This excites Jerem since even at rank F, the abilities are already excellent. The problem is, 20 red stones are a lot. He grabs the orange stone and tells the system to strengthen transmission. A flashbang-like burst of light blinds him momentarily. With that, transmission advances to rank E. His mana capacity increases significantly, and now he can further enhance abilities acquired through transmission. Considering how many abilities he has, this upgrade is perfect. He also upgrades analysis, which now allows him to predict enemy movements. Curious to see how it works, he tests the skill. Just then, a pleasant smell hits his nose. Hammond has prepared a meal, saying it's too bulky to pack, so they should eat it now. Jerem eagerly grabs his chopsticks, saying it will be a pleasure. As he eats, he gains a 20% bonus to all stats for 3 hours. The food is incredibly potent. Obviously, he eats everything and cleans the plate. He jokes that when gamer parents have kids, they'll convince them to eat vegetables by saying, "Eat this broccoli, and you'll gain 15 agility points." He praises Hammond, saying it's now much easier to escape. But Hammond mentions that the entrance is blocked with wood. Jerem assures him, saying he knows another way out. He raises his chain and slams it into the ground. A path to the sewers opens. The two descend into the tunnel when suddenly an earthquake shakes the ground above. Hammond has no idea what's happening, but Jerem remains unimpressed. Then the horror reveals itself. A three-headed monstrosity emerges. The heads scream in unison, mocking Jerem for finally being found. Hammond panics as Jerem wonders how they tracked him. The creature is grotesque with 3 heads, 2 arms, and blades extending from its limbs. Park appears with his signature terrifying grin, calling out to Jerem. He tells Hammond to stay back and activates analysis. The system identifies Park as an infected awakened with triple-headed traits, enhanced sword skills, agility, and more. Park, thrilled, declares he can't wait to kill Jerem, calling the encounter perfect timing. The system warns Jerem that he's been inflicted with fear. Hammond, overwhelmed, panics. Jerem activates mental care, gradually dispelling Hammond's fear. Park marvels at Jerem's many abilities, asking how it's possible. Jerem dismisses him, telling Hammond to return to the market because things are about to get messy. He activates Chain Separation and Fire Dragon while fully buffed. Decked out with agility-enhancing cat feet and other abilities, Jerem exudes confidence. Park lunges at him, but Jerem uses Prediction, dodges the first punch, and lands a solid hit on Park's chest. The monster reels back, coughing blood, unable to breathe properly. The imprint of Jerem's fist remains on its torso. The other 2 heads comment on how ridiculously strong the punch was, questioning how one person could outmatch them all. Park silences them, saying they can't kill Jerem quickly. They need to savor it. He activates his strengthened version of Fear. The system informs Jerem that he's learned 32% of the ability used against him. If he experiences this skill multiple times and reaches 100%, he'll master it. Jerem notices something new. He anticipates attacks from behind. Park charges again, but Jerem predicts it, landing another devastating blow to his chest. The force sends Park flying into the tunnel wall. Park struggles to understand how Jerem reacts so quickly. The 2 remaining heads plead with Park to retreat, but Park refuses, calling them useless trash. He prepares his weapons as the heads beg him not to kill them again. Ignoring their pleas, he says goodbye and cuts them off. The severed heads grotesquely mutate into something even worse. After a gruesome transformation, Park reemerges with a single massive eye on a new head. He boasts about feeling magnificent now. Activating Fear again, Jerem's skill learning reaches 83%. Jerem is thrilled, calling Park a gift that keeps on giving. Once more, Jerem fends off the fear with ease, using his chains to defend. Finally, his fear resistance hits 100%, upgrading to rank E. Now it's Jerem's turn. He activates his own version of Fear. Park hesitates, realizing it's the same ability he used. But it's too late. Jerem lands another punch to Park's stomach. This time, Jerem follows up with a relentless combo. The monstrous head bursts, and Park's body is hurled to the far end of the tunnel. As he struggles to rise, Park finally understands. Jerem is on an entirely different level. Jerem cautiously approaches the battered Park, who is half transformed and struggling to stay upright. Before Park can react, Jerem secures a chain around his arm and tries to pull him back. However, the monster manages to escape by abandoning half of his body. Jerem is amazed to see that even the severed arm alone is worth an orange magic stone. He quickly calls out for Hammond, asking where he is. Hammond appears, shaken, saying he's been hearing terrifying noises. Jerem explains that he couldn't finish Park off, but at least he made him retreat, and it's unlikely he'll come back. The cook is astonished that Jerem survived a fight against the transformed Park. Jerem suggests they head back. Later, Jerem tells Hammond to wait below as he climbs out of the sewer. When Hammond emerges, he asks why the monsters couldn't enter the area. To Hammond's surprise, Jerem has led them straight to Dongtak's house. Jerem calls for the professor, who appears overjoyed to see him. It turns out that Hammond and Dongtak already know each other. Hammond explains that Jerem saved him. Dongtak smiles and says Jerem helped him as well, leaving Hammond in shock at how many people Jerem has rescued. Indeed, Jerem seems to be the most altruistic protagonist, constantly saving someone here and another there. Jerem acknowledges their reunion, but suggests they all go inside since he's being pursued. The chubby professor asks why, and Jerem replies that it's because he's been killing too many enemies. Dongtak praises him, saying if that's the case, he's more than welcome. Hammond shakes Dongtak's hand, thanking him for his kindness. He then turns to Jerem, thanking him as well for everything. With this, Jerem's favorability with Hammond reaches the threshold, activating the transmission ability. A glowing Digimon-like circle appears, transferring abilities. Jerem, now learning Hammond's cooking skill, finds himself at rank F, 0% progress. He wonders if cocktails also fall under this skill. Turning to Hammond, he asks if he brought any drinks. Heading to the kitchen, Jerem decides to prepare a cocktail, not an energy drink with vodka, but one with soda. After a quick shake, the cocktail is ready. It grants a 10% stamina boost for 10 minutes. While it's not as impressive as Hammond's creations, Jerem is satisfied, knowing they'll still be useful. Meanwhile, Park is in the city, killing zombies. After each kill, he devours them, and finally his arm regenerates. Once more, he vows to kill Shin Jerem. However, he senses something approaching, a powerful energy from afar. A demon-like presence causes him to tremble, overwhelmed by its immense power. He even kneels, realizing he can't resist this being's existence. From a distance, a figure appears. Park recognizes her as the likely ruler of this area, the leader of the zombies. A plant-like tentacle emerges from her back, burrowing into the ground. It reappears on the other side, forming a giant mouth in front of the zombies. Park, mesmerized, declares that this is the queen to whom he wants to dedicate everything. The zombies gather, merging into a strange, brain-like structure with a large eye on top. This is their majesty, the 24th master of the martial arts dojo, Park Izio. It's revealed that she's the granddaughter of the legendary Dalbong. As a child, Izio couldn't stand injustice. If a chubby kid stole from her friend, she'd immediately seek revenge. She frequently fought bullies in her neighborhood and began training with her grandfather from a young age. By the age of 6, she had already turned her school into a peaceful place through sheer strength. One day in the mountains, her grandfather asked her what she would do with her power. She replied that she wanted to protect everyone so they could enjoy life. Dalbong bowed to her. All the disciples of the dojo followed suit, recognizing her as their new master. At 17, she began spreading her ideals worldwide. Once, she intervened when some men mistreated a boy, kicking them away with no hesitation. She brought the boy back to the dojo, introducing him as their newest member. The boy began training, and a year later, he joined her in standing up against injustice. One day, they encountered men harassing a girl. He boldly confronted them, asking if they wanted to die. The next scene shows both of them lying exhausted on the ground, having fought valiantly. This was the first time Izio saw someone she saved go on to save another. As time passed, more people began to follow her, drawn to her vision of a world where everyone could smile. But now, the world had become a living hell. Still, Izio brought her entire dojo with her, commanding them to use their martial arts to save others. As they charged forward, she warned that anyone who fled would die by her hands. The battle had begun, and Park Izio refused to give up on her beliefs. But then a massive figure approached her, ready to strike. At that moment, she was utterly exhausted, with no strength left to fight. Closing her eyes, she accepted that survival was impossible. However, one of her disciples stepped in front of her, taking the blow directly to his stomach. It was the very boy she had saved in the past. She screamed his name and lost her composure. With a powerful kick, she sent the brute flying and rushed to the disciple, demanding to know why he did it. The young man, bleeding heavily, smiled and said he had learned that martial arts were meant to save others. He was happy he could use what he learned in the right way. She begged him to stop talking, overwhelmed by the amount of blood he was losing, but he simply thanked her for saving him that day. It was then that Izio realized something profound. Her group was dying, protecting one another in the process. Those who had grown and trained with her had saved countless lives. But it was undeniable. Every day, more and more of them were disappearing. Their mission to save others came at the cost of their lives. Holding a flower, she whispered a wish for everyone to find a better place. That night, she resolved to eliminate all those who occupied the village. But just as she prepared, the sky turned green. It was the day the meteor struck. Instead of fleeing, one of her followers ran to her, calling for their master. The meteor hit squarely, engulfing the entire area in smoke. When Ezia regained consciousness, she realized that everyone around her was melting. Her disciples turned to her, saying they felt strange and urging her to flee. But it was too late. Everyone exploded and the goo splattered onto her. She was absorbed into the amalgamation, falling to her knees as claws sprouted from her back and horns grew on her head. The desire to kill consumed her mind. When she regained some semblance of awareness, she found herself transformed. From the pile of corpses, she rose to the sky. A massive eye called her Your Majesty, urging her to consume and perfect herself. She stabbed it with her tail, draining it as the creature pledged its loyalty to the strong. Back in the city, Jerem noticed something strange. The zombies stopped moving. The system announced that Park Kun-sung had died. The zombies in front of Jerem disintegrated into sludge. A new mission appeared: prevent the Queen's perfect transformation. He had a 5-hour time limit and needed to inflict at least 50% damage on the infected ground. Sebastian appeared, warning Jerem that Izio had transformed into one of the monsters. Jerem remembered her as Dalbong's granddaughter. Well, at least we're all dealing with the same problem, Jerem muttered. Sebastian said he had already sent crows to notify Dalbong. Within moments, the old man arrived, demanding to know where Izio was. Sebastian pointed to the purple zone, saying she was at its center. Without hesitation, Dalbong sprinted toward her. Jerem told Sebastian to warn others to stay back. It was going to get dangerous. Dalbong stopped and called out for Izio. Jerem looked up, confused by what he saw. At the top of the city, a cocoon floated in the sky, absorbing everything around it. Inside, a faint face could be seen emerging. Jerem activated analysis. Park Izio, 23 years old, now the seat of the queen. She was receiving energy from multiple tubes, and once fully formed, she would no longer be able to return to her human form. Jerem informed Dalbong that they needed to sever those connections to save her. He leaped up with his flaming chains, landing a direct hit on the cocoon. However, it only lost 0.5% durability. Dalbong, at a loss, began concentrating his mana. He explained to Jerem that he could only use this technique once and urged him to watch carefully. Leaping toward the cocoon, Dalbong declared, if something is hard on the outside. Jerem's analysis revealed that Dalbong's trembling fist had an effect similar to acoustic magic. It's soft on the inside. That's where you strike. Dalbong finished. His punch landed with a massive shockwave, creating an explosion and causing liquid to ooze out of the cocoon. Despite his age, Dalbong managed to reduce the cocoon's durability to 88.9%. The old man impressed Jerem, who remarked on his incredible strength. Dalbong said he needed time to recover and encouraged Jerem to learn from the technique. Confidently, Jerem replied that he had already learned enough. He detached his chains and launched himself at the cocoon. Activating the acoustic magic in his fist, he landed a solid punch. A tentacle shriveled and exploded, disconnecting from the cocoon. Its durability dropped to 74%. Dalbong was amazed that Jerem had mastered the technique after seeing it just once. Jerem, combining his skills, began systematically destroying tentacle after tentacle. The cocoon's durability continued to drop, eventually reaching 47.5%. With the completion of the emergency quest, Jerem gained the ability to proclaim another area. Suddenly, the cocoon from the ceiling fell to the ground. Emerging from it was none other than Queen Izio, now in an unstable transformation state. A new mission triggered: defeat Queen Izio. As she locked eyes with Jerem, the system issued a dire warning. A high-level target was now focused on him. The system advised Jerem to run. Slowly, Izio began regaining fragments of her consciousness. Jerem's prediction ability revealed she would attack from all directions. He grabbed Dalbong's arm, insisting they needed to flee. Dalbong, still calling for his granddaughter, seemed confused and reluctant to leave. Noticing Dalbong's condition, Jerem realized the old man would die if he stayed. With a burst of strength, Jerem threw Dalbong a safe distance away, activating agile movement and telling him to run ahead. Behind him, Izio emerged, flying at high speed toward Jerem. Once again, he activated prediction, identifying the paths of her attacks. He countered with his chain, defending himself. But another strike came from behind. Already prepared, Jerem blocked again, activating fear in an attempt to stall her. However, her high rank nullified the effect. Switching strategies, he activated acoustics and Blue Fire Dragon, preparing a strike. Despite the powerful combination, his attack had no effect on her abdomen. It became clear she was so strong that she didn't even bother to block. Then she landed a devastating kick on Jerem, sending him flying. He ricocheted through the forest, crashing into a wall. Izio approached him, step by menacing step. Desperate, Jerem activated wooden construction, encasing her in a barrier. He quickly got up and started running. Within seconds, Izio shattered the barrier effortlessly, resuming her pursuit. Jerem ran toward the base, hearing Dalbong and Ney calling out for him. As one of her attacks neared his back, he activated his area proclamation ability. A barrier formed around the house, protecting everyone inside. Jerem barely managed to dive through as the barrier deflected her attacks. Now within the safe zone, he was prompted to choose combatants. The fewer selected, the stronger the buffs they'd receive. Knowing Dalbong couldn't fight his own granddaughter, Jerem chose himself as the sole combatant. Immediately, the buff took effect. Energy from everyone within the area flowed into him, dramatically increasing his mana and strength. Dalbong marveled at the transformation as Jerem instructed everyone to retreat indoors. He declared that he alone would face Izio. The group obeyed, retreating to safety. Meanwhile, Izio's tentacles began piercing through the barrier, tearing it apart. The globe of energy shattered and the two faced off. Stretching out his hand, Jerem vowed this time would be different. Combining dilution technique with wooden construction, he created a massive wooden foot to crush her. By the time Izio noticed the attack, it was too late. The foot descended, seemingly crushing her, until her tentacles intercepted, tickling the surface. Frustrated, Jerem pressed harder, but she broke through again. Undeterred, he leaped for a follow-up, enhancing his attack with crushing palm. From afar, Dalbong couldn't believe what he was witnessing. As Jerem's palm struck, energy surged, forcing Izio into the ground. Even as she tried to retaliate, Jerem focused energy into his fists, activating the martial demon's second form, the Dance of Fists. Branches wrapped around her tentacles, holding her down as Jerem landed a crushing blow from behind. This time, she was flung across the battlefield, crashing into the distance. Jerem, breathing heavily, wondered if he had finally overpowered her. But from the shadows, she emerged again, exuding a menacing purple aura. He noticed her chest's core was beginning to crack. Using analysis, the system revealed that this core was her weakness. Destroying it would end the fight. At that moment, prediction warned him of an incoming attack to his head. He narrowly dodged, realizing the next set of attacks would overwhelm him if he didn't retreat. Observing her movements, he questioned whether she was now using martial arts. But before he could react further, she lashed out with a tentacle, landing a strike that splashed into a red puddle. Despite her relentless assault, Jerem managed to grab her leg, swinging her like a sack of garbage and slamming her into the ground. The cocoon's durability dropped to 77%. Seizing the opportunity, Jerem prepared another strike, landing a direct hit. However, Jerem began to notice a pattern. Even when his hits seemed to land, Izio managed to evade at the last moment. As another attack approached, he barely dodged, feeling a sharp pain in his chest from the near miss. She continued her relentless assault, moving faster with each strike. Jerem couldn't help but wonder why her speed seemed to be increasing. She gave at him with an attack aimed at his face, and he countered with a punch. Both of them landed their strikes, sending each other sliding backward. Outside the barrier, the others could only hear the sounds of their fierce battle. Nei asked Dalbong if he was sure Jerem would be okay. But Dalbong's expression was grim. He knew things were heading toward disaster. At this moment, we delve into Dalbong's past. A martial prodigy blessed by the gods, he quickly rose to become a champion. But his arrogance and selfishness overshadowed his skill. He berated his own son, calling him weak and a disgrace to their family. The boy left behind a note apologizing for not being someone his father could rely on. At the age of 20, his son left home. Dalbong dismissed him as a loser and moved on, forgetting the boy entirely. Years later, government officials came to Dalbong's dojo asking if he was the father of Park Sin-rian. Dalbong immediately sensed something was wrong. The scene shifted to his son's funeral. A little girl sat on the floor crying while others murmured about how tragic the car accident was. Dalbong stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The girl looked up at him and recognized his face from a photo and ran to him in tears, asking if he was her grandfather. Until that moment, Dalbong hadn't known he had a granddaughter. With no other family, he was left to raise her. Despite being too old to care for a child, Dalbong did his best. It wasn't easy. One day, he asked her what she wanted to do with the power she gained from martial arts. She replied that she wanted to protect everyone so they could enjoy their lives. Dalbong smiled, gently patting her head, telling her she was far better than he ever was. It was that he realized he had something far more precious than martial arts. Though he hadn't known how to raise her properly, she grew into an adult with a heart purer than anyone else's. She soon became the most valuable treasure in his life. Yongshun, standing beside him, asked why he was just standing there. Dalbong was contemplating the martial demon's final form, a technique that exchanged one's life force for a celestial body. He told Yongshun to take care of things if Izio returned, then whispered that he loved his granddaughter deeply. As a blue aura enveloped him, Yongshun shouted, asking what Dalbong was doing. But Dalbong continued to gather energy, declaring he'd give everything for Izio. As his power surged into the heavens, he acknowledged the price. Even if it meant sacrificing himself, he was willing to save Izio. Meanwhile, Jerem was being beaten down. Izio's speed had reached a point where even his predictions couldn't keep up. She launched another punch straight at his face, but suddenly, Dalbong arrived with a flying kick. Izio noticed him too late and took a heavy blow to her arm, sending her flying. Dalbong stepped in front of Jerem, telling him to watch and learn. This is the true power of the celestial demon's martial arts. A pack of spectral tigers emerged from Dalbong, charging toward Izio. The system informed Jerem that he was witnessing a perfect demonstration of an expert's skill. His learning meter shot to 100%, unlocking the second gate of dilution. Dalbong assured Jerem he could handle the chaos, giving him permission to rest. Izio, meanwhile, gathered the energy from Dalbong's previous attacks, neutralizing them. Activating her own aura, she prepared for a counterattack. Dalbong praised her, saying it was the least he expected from his granddaughter. But he warned her to stay alert. He was ready for the final fight of his life. Dalbong advanced again, narrowly dodging her attacks and landing a powerful punch to her abdomen, sending her flying. Still midair, she activated power in her hands, forming spikes that pierced his back. Dalbong shrugged off the attack, criticizing her weak resolve. Charging forward, he called her slow and unmotivated. She turned to defend, creating a glowing energy sphere. Even so, Dalbong's strike broke through, slamming her into the ground and cracking her defense. He landed on her shield, calling her name and asking if she had truly forgotten everything when she became a monster. The barrier shattered as she retaliated with another attack. Dalbong ignored it, grabbing her arm and declaring it impossible for her to win. Someone who had lost the true path could never defeat him. With that, he delivered a headbutt directly into her core. The explosion tore through the forest, leaving destruction in its wake. Sometime later, Dalbong stood, distransformed. In front of him, Azio remained standing. He couldn't believe she was still alive after everything. She stretched her arm, forming another attack, the same move that had killed Park earlier. Dalbong advanced, undeterred, declaring he would destroy everything if that's what it took. He landed a punch squarely in her face, sending her flying. But Azio appeared above him, ready to deliver a kick. This time, Dalbong was too slow and was struck, slamming into the ground. As Dalbong collapsed, weakened, Queen Azio wasted no time and approached him with a flurry of strikes. Jerem, seeing the danger, called out to the old man and rushed to attack her from behind. Once again, she dodged his attack effortlessly. But Dalbong followed it up with a heavy kick, and together, they seemed to be gaining ground against her. However, she retaliated, landing a brutal hit on Dalbong's jaw and a powerful kick to Jerem's ribs. The battle had dragged on, and Azio only seemed to grow faster and stronger. Jerem was slammed into a wall again, leaving the people at the base in disbelief. Even the two strongest fighters together couldn't bring her down. As Azio advanced toward Dalbong, he tried to land another punch, but she blocked it and lifted him by the neck. She prepared a clawed hand to finish him, but Dalbong called her name and touched her face. For a moment she froze. Memories of their time in the mountains together, smiling and happy, flashed through her mind. She let out a scream, dropping Dalbong. Realizing this was his final chance, Dalbong gathered all his remaining mana and activated the 8 Gates technique one last time. Izzy retaliated, firing a web-like attack at him, but Dalbong pressed forward, striking her crystal directly with his celestial palm. His mana flowed through her body, causing the crystal to crack. With his strength spent, Dalbong turned to Jerem and told him to finish it. Jerem leaped into action, activating the second form of the martial demon. With a flurry of tiger dance strikes, he finally sent her flying. Her body crashed to the ground as the system announced that her core had been completely destroyed. The emergency mission was over and the queen had been defeated. Exhausted, Jerem collapsed to the ground as the area proclamation deactivated. His vision blurred as he saw people rushing to Dalbong's side. The system informed him that he was about to receive an incredible achievement for completing an impossible mission. Sometime later, Jerem woke up in a bed, groggy and confused. For defeating the queen, he had earned a new ability, the power to combine 2 skills into a temporary new one. As he pondered this skill synthesis concept, someone called his name. It was Nay. She asked if he was feeling better, but he was still disoriented, unsure where he was. Nay explained that he was in a new building they constructed in Sector 2. Confused by the mention of Sector 2, Jerem got up to look outside. To his shock, he saw a thriving city that had been built while he was unconscious. Nay informed him that he had been asleep for over a month. She jokingly mentioned that it was thanks to a catheter system draining his body. Jerem, both surprised and mildly embarrassed, watched as she left to fetch the doctor. Moments later, the doctor arrived, greeting him as the leader. Jerem was taken aback by the title. The doctor explained that, according to Nay, Jerem was the one who had built the foundation for this place and had nearly died protecting the village. Though embarrassed, Jerem admitted the doctor wasn't entirely wrong. The doctor extended his hand, channeling mana, and Jerem asked if he had awakened. The doctor confirmed that he had, thanks to a magic stone given to him by Nay. He assured Jerem that with another week of care, he'd be back to normal. Jerem, however, felt much better already. As the doctor left, Jerem activated transmission, forming a glowing circle around them. He gained the rank F medicine skill, allowing him to heal targets using mana. The system immediately combined it with his acoustics ability to create a healing sound. Activating it, Jerem felt a refreshing sensation as his body rapidly healed. Ignoring the doctor's warnings, he got out of bed, declaring himself 100% recovered. Both May and the doctor were shocked by his quick recovery after such a long rest. The doctor commended him, calling him an extraordinary awakened individual. After everything was settled, the doctor left and Nay asked what ability Jerem had used. He brushed it off as something new, but was more curious about how everything had changed. Nay offered to guide him around the city, explaining the developments. The townspeople, excited to see him awake, greeted him as their savior and leader. Jerem felt awkward and overwhelmed by the attention, unsure of who all these people were. He turned to Nay, asking what she had been telling everyone. She confidently replied that she'd simply told the truth, that he was the leader who had saved them all. Blushing, Jerem asked if these people were the survivors from the city. Nay confirms that since Jerem defeated the queen, the purple ground had disappeared. This allowed them to rescue many people and use crystals to awaken others. Jerem asks if it was difficult to collect so many stones. She explains that Professor Sebastian discovered a cache while exploring several tanks surrounded by dead zombies with crystals nearby. Jerem then asks about Dalbong and Izio. Nay says they are in Sector 1 and suggests he go see for himself. When they arrive, Jerem is astonished by the size of the facility. It looks like a modern hospital, complete with electricity. Nay explains they salvaged generators from the city and were rebuilding everything. As they enter, Jerem sees the doctor standing next to two bodies. He immediately asks about Dalbong's condition. The doctor explains that Dalbong's spine is severely damaged. Even if he survives this crisis, it's unlikely he'll ever walk again. Jerem notices Dalbong's white mustache and wonders if it's always been that color or if he's just noticing it now. He then asks about Izio. The doctor says her vital signs are stable, but her mind shows no signs of regaining consciousness. Nay pulls Jerem aside, holding his hand and placing it on Izio's head. Suddenly, they find themselves in front of a black sphere. Jerem is disoriented, unsure of where they are. Thankfully, the system explains that they are inside Park Izio's mind. Because Jerem had witnessed the perfect demonstration of an expert, his mental care ability had advanced to rank E. May explains that Izio's mind is corrupted. Using analysis, Jerem sees that her mind is surrounded by a barrier of despair. May admits she has tried to enter countless times but found it too difficult to break through. Jerem suggests breaking the barrier, but Nay warns that doing so would cause Izio's mind to shatter. They would need to rescue her before that happened. Jerem, confident, says he has an idea worth trying. He combines mental care with fear, creating a new ability, mental pressure. Activating it, he feels an overwhelming power in his hand. He touches the barrier and energy begins spreading across it. The entire sphere fragments, leaving May amazed. She asks how he managed to do it on his first try. Jerem simply replies, "I'll be back soon," and dives in. Inside Izio's mind, he sees a corrupted zombie accusing her of causing its death. Izio punches the zombie, killing it, but more keep coming. The apparitions berate her, calling her a cowardly disgrace and questioning if this is what they deserve for following her. Despite their words, Izio doesn't hesitate. She keeps fighting, finishing them off one by one. Even as they cry out in pain, she pushes forward. Then a shadow resembling Dalbong forms, asking if she intends to kill her grandfather a second time. Izio doesn't flinch and delivers a flying kick to its face. Even the boy she had saved appears, asking how long the great master will continue like this. She punches him too, unwavering. This endless cycle continues as the apparitions mock her, claiming she'll tire eventually. They declare they have all eternity, and she will break down sooner or later. Bit by bit, she begins to lose her mind. Dalbong's shadow gains color and urges her to rest, claiming it's the only way out since she'll never escape this place. At that moment, an energy burst explodes on the ground, catching Izio off guard. Jerem appears, surprising her. Recognizing him, she asks what he's doing there. Jerem admits how mentally exhausted she looks. After all, she's been fighting these apparitions non-stop for over a month. He tells her he's there to help her escape. The apparitions taunt her, questioning if she plans to abandon them and run away. Jerem uses analysis, revealing that these apparitions are manifestations of Izio's trauma. If she doesn't overcome them, they will endlessly reappear. Seeing how unwell she is, Jerem tells her that none of this is her fault. He reminds her that believing these accusations would insult the sacrifices of everyone who fought alongside her. She admits she knows that, but it's hard to accept. Jerem points to the apparitions. Do they really look like the comrades you remember? Izio begins recalling those she fought alongside. The boy who sacrificed himself to shield her. The people who stood in front of her as the meteor fell to protect her. She remembers that, until the end, they were pure martial artists. It was her own fear of being insufficient that had transformed her comrades into monsters. To lend a hand, Jerem activated his mental power. He walked toward the creatures and stopped in front of them. He bowed and apologized for insulting their legacy like this. The ghosts seemed confused, but not for long as Izio once again started destroying them. With that, the mental barrier seemed to dissolve as well. The creatures transformed back into her comrades. They told her that now she was truly the master they had known. They approached her and told her not to resent them like this. They had cherished her time by her side. They would always remain in her memories, but now it was time for her to follow her own path. Izio called out to them as they disappeared into the air. With this, she managed to overcome her trauma. She turned to Jerem and thanked him for his help, but he responded that she had saved herself, not him. Now it was time for both of them to return to the real world. After crossing the void, she woke up in the hospital. Immediately, she sat up and called for her grandfather. She completely ignored Jerem and ran to Dalbong, saying he was in that state because of her. She fixated on his white mustache. But at that moment, Dalbong opened his eyes. He woke up, telling her it wasn't her fault. If he hadn't saved her at that moment, he would have regretted it for the rest of his life. She told him it was okay, and he didn't need to feel regret about anything anymore. And with that, he hugged his granddaughter tightly. A while later, as Izio was leaving the room, Nay asked to talk to her for a moment. There was something she wanted to say about Jerem and asked her to take a look. Jerem was sitting on a bench in his city. The boy had suddenly become president. Nay approached him and asked why he was sitting there alone. He replied that he was just resting but noticed that the people seemed quite happy. She explained that everyone was feeling this way because they had just escaped that hell. He then asked about the problems they had faced that month. She said that thanks to the elders in the city, everything had gone well. Jerem was relieved. The abilities he helped awaken had truly made a difference, but he wanted to know if they were missing anything. She said that magical stones were the biggest shortage. Those were the only way to strengthen objects and people. Jerem was surprised that she knew about object strengthening. She explained that she understood it when he mentioned that crystals work as experience. He remembered saying that. She added that she had placed several stones in a generator, greatly increasing its efficiency. That explained why Sector 1 had so much power. He then said it was the perfect time for him to explore the region and collect as much as possible. But she protested, saying he had just woken up and should leave yet. He countered that this was the perfect reason to start moving his body again. But someone else interjected, saying that if he was going, they would have to accompany him. It was a confident fighter who claimed to be a zombie-crushing professional. Jerem simply agreed, saying, "Let's go." The only thing they needed was a motorcycle. She hopped onto the back of the bike and Jerem sped through the city. They encountered zombies ahead and stopped the bike. The chances of finding survivors were obviously very slim. The bridge ahead was packed with zombies. The horde came rushing toward them, but the confident companion declared she could handle it. She ran toward the creatures and delivered a powerful kick straight to the head of one of the monsters, sending it to the ground. A tongue lashed out from behind her, but she dodged and countered with another punch and a kick, unleashing energy that scattered the zombies. Jerem was impressed by her strength. Finally, the crystals they had been searching for dropped. She handed them to him, and he opened his inventory. She was curious about what that was, and he explained it was just one of his abilities. She asked if they were going to the city, and he said, "Of course." Once on the street, Jerem looked up and saw something surprising. A message indicated that to the south there was an area using a protective shield. Jerem wondered how people had advanced so much. It seemed to be an organization also known as SHIELD. It was founded with a motto of justice by a national actor named Lee Sang-kyul. The old man stood before the crowd, shouting that SHIELD would protect everyone. The crowd erupted in cheers. Meanwhile, soldiers were shown shooting zombies, fulfilling Sang-kyul's promise. But that was only the beginning. Soon, they began expanding. Sang-kyul raised the hand of a soldier, declaring them the heroes who protected everyone. He encouraged people to appreciate these brave individuals risking their lives. As a result, rewards for fighters increased, creating growing inequalities. A social pyramid formed. While the soldiers pretended to do most of the work, ordinary people were left carrying the burden and doing manual labor. The poor were soon living in tents, while the military and Sang-kyul indulged in luxury. Then the experiments began. A scientist drew blood from a zombie, while 3 people were tied to a wall. He approached them, and you can imagine what happened next. A quick injection, and one of them began to transform. This was the true face of Sang-kyul's army: crazy experiments and pure injustice. SHIELD was essentially a trap you couldn't escape once inside. Seeing the message, Jerem realized they were starting to make their move. Apparently, Nay had told Izio that Jerem knew about the future. Izio asked if these people were going to cause problems. He replied that they probably would, so they needed to investigate. But first, Jerem slammed his fist into the ground. The zombies across the city heard the sound. He grabbed his chain, declaring that it was time to herd the sheep. The zombies swarmed toward them, but the pair easily eliminated them. Not long after, they returned to their motorcycle. That's when Jerem had the idea to upgrade it. The system informed him that he could enhance both the body and the engine. This meant the bike might gain 2 different abilities. He modified the engine, drastically reducing its sound. Izio immediately noticed and asked why it had gone so quiet. He explained that he had strengthened it the same way he had upgraded his weapon. Impressed, she admitted she didn't know the stones could be used in so many ways. He eyed another stone and said he would show her again. He strengthened the engine further, upgrading it to the next rank and unlocking the stealth ability. On the road, he activated the stealth mode, and the 2 rode silently, blending into the shadows as if in black and white. They passed by SHIELD soldiers stationed at a bridge. Jerem thought it was the perfect chance to test the stealth. They moved close to the soldiers, who seemed to sense something for a moment. One asked if something was wrong, while the other said he felt something strange. But they had no idea Jerem and Izio were already far ahead, near the base. It was the same place Jerem had seen in the past. Their stealth worked so well that they found themselves in the middle of the enemy's base. At that moment, an announcement played declaring that they had finished restoring the village. The voice was one Jerem knew all too well: Kim Hyung-suk, SHIELD's propaganda director. Hyung-suk spoke about how, thanks to the awakened ones who had dedicated their lives, they had finally achieved this success. Pointing to the soldiers, he proclaimed that they deserved long lives. For him, the government and military were useless. Only SHIELD could win this war. The crowd cheered SHIELD's name in celebration. Hyung-suk continued, saying they must first appreciate the heroism of these individuals. That was why those who fought on the front lines would become first-class citizens. Jerem activated analysis, discovering that Kim Hyung-suk was a human magic stone eater with the title of hybrid creature. Hyung-suk showed a map, urging everyone to continue earning their qualifications. That way they could access the true SHIELD villages, or even the central base known as Paradise. Izio remarked that the group seemed massive and highly influential. How do they have so much strength and military resources? She asked. Jerem had no idea but agreed it wasn't surprising that Hyung-suk dismissed the official military as incompetent. He was more curious about the hybrid creature title and why Yahello was so focused on expansion. Clearly, there was more to this than he knew. Izio asked what he planned to do. He replied that for now, they would do nothing since there were many civilians present. Plus, he had no idea how powerful the awakened ones in Yahello were. At the moment, they were at a numerical disadvantage. He explained that as far as he knew, S.H.I.E.L.D. conducted experiments with zombie blood. Izio asked if they were insane and what they planned to do in paradise. Jerem said they would focus on gathering information for now. The scene shifted to the forest, where a crow flew overhead. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s army was advancing, carrying injured men on stretchers. One soldier muttered that the operation had fallen into a trap and was now a complete failure. Zombies began approaching as the soldiers prepared for battle. They started shooting, using shields to hold back the horde. Some zombies fell and the soldiers grew optimistic, thinking they might hold out. Then the larger zombies appeared. One soldier shouted for them to block the attack. 3 soldiers tried to brace themselves, but they were crushed. Others opened fire, but despite hitting their marks, it was too late. A group of long-tongued zombies attacked from behind. Realizing his mistake, one soldier knew this was the end. But suddenly, a long-tongued zombie was struck in the head, 2 falling instantly. Confused, the soldier looked around, unsure of what had happened. It was Jerem and Izio arriving in style. In mere seconds, they cleared the entire horde of zombies. Jerem asked if the soldiers were okay. But the soldiers, overwhelmed by the pair's strength, were more afraid than reassured, demanding to know who they were. Jerem explained that they had come after seeing the message in the city. He then asked if they were part of the organization called S.H.I.E.L.D. The scene then transitions to Hyung-suk's office, where he tells someone to come in. A chubby man enters the room and says he's there to deliver information about the reconnaissance operation. Hyung-suk says he wants to know the reason for these mishaps, and that he's not helping them get stronger just for them to be this incompetent. The man trembles, apologizes, and tries to explain that they encountered several mutant zombies. However, Hyung-suk has already decided he needs to be careful with so many incompetent people around him. The man then says that at least it wasn't all bad, because they managed to find 2 amazing individuals who want to join S.H.I.E.L.D. Hyung-suk orders him to explain, and he says they're people who easily killed mutated zombies. Hyung-suk is impressed since those mutations were extremely difficult to defeat. However, he finds it suspicious that someone so powerful would want to join S.H.I.E.L.D. Maybe they were planning something. He then says he wants to meet these people and asks where they are. The scene shifts to the group sitting on a couch. Hyung-suk and his vacuum-packed friends introduce themselves, saying they are the owners and protectors of the place. At that moment, Jerem activates his analysis and sees that all 3 of them were eaters of human magical stones. The 2 then introduce themselves. Izio says he thinks he's seen her before and asks if she was part of the martial arts dojo. She says yes, and that before everything started, she was a master. He says it's great news to know that someone as amazing as her came to visit. However, he wants to know why she no longer calls herself a master. Izio explains that she no longer has any comrades, so she's a master to no one, all because of the zombies. The man says he understands and now wants to know why the 2 are there. Jerem says it's because they don't want to lose anyone else around them. He's been observing the actions S.H.I.E.L.D. has taken to protect people and believes it's a good place to be. Wow, the protagonist lies without hesitation, doesn't he? The guy doesn't even blush. Hyung-suk says that's right. Here, they prioritize actions over words. Jerem then says that's why they came. They also want to help save more people and prevent chaos from taking over. Hyung-suk is thoughtful. He initially thought these 2 were there for power. If what they're saying is true, maybe it could be useful. He then asks why the 2 don't join the Vigilance Squad. If they manage to gather enough achievements, they could enter paradise. Jerem interrupts and says that's not what they want. All they want is to help protect people. Hyung-suk says that's fine then. They'll stay in the Vigilance Squad and don't need to worry about this so-called paradise. Jerem then comments that based on what he saw from the previous team, they'll meet people who won't just get in the way. Vacuum-packed no. One says the kid is pretty arrogant and asks if he's underestimating S.H.I.E.L.D.'s power. But then Hyung-suk interrupts and says the 2 of them in the same squad are already more than enough in terms of power. The 2 get visibly annoyed, veins popping on their faces, and ask if she's looking for a fight, until Hyung-suk gives them a glare and they quiet down. Man, they train their chest and arms but skip leg day, the classic Dorito shape. Hyung-suk then agrees and says they'll prepare a special squad just for the 2 of them. Both of them stand up and thank Hyung-suk for understanding their situation. As soon as they leave, the others comment that they seem skilled but are way too full of themselves. Hyung-suk tells them to calm down, saying that taming a wild beast is much more appealing. First, they needed to ensure that these kids were truly as skilled as they seemed. Outside, Izio asks why Jerem didn't want to join the so-called paradise and refused the offer. Jerem explains that pretending to be a hero who wants to help people is the fastest way to gain that guy's trust. He then starts stretching and says it's time to prepare. What he had expected was just arriving, a bunch of guys heading his way, practically punching bags. A tight-shirted guy tells Jerem that if he wants to prove the 2 of them are enough for the squad, they'll have to fight. Izio tries to excuse herself, saying that her earlier statement was just a joke. However, the guy questions whether she's going back on her word. Someone so inconsistent didn't deserve the title of master. That's where she clarifies that when she said 2 were needed, she was joking. In reality, just 1 was enough. Wow, she really caught him off guard there. The men start rushing at her, calling her a bastard, but she's confident and just gives them a little hand signal. Still, you have to hand it to these guys. One even has a man of fist. Too bad he gets kicked square in the face. 1 punch to another's face and a hit to the chest of the last one. The poor guy's stomach twists and they're all sent flying. The onlookers comment that she's tearing them apart, but even with all of them attacking simultaneously, they didn't stand a chance. Another beautiful kick executed by Izio. The tight-shirted guys are terrified of the strength of Jojin martial arts. Another punch sends Yun flying far away. Not even 10 seconds had passed, and they were all moaning in pain. She then says they're a bunch of weaklings and asks how long she'll have to deal with people like them. She looks at Jerem and warns them that he's much stronger than she is. The men start trembling. If they didn't stand a chance against her, imagine against him. One of them, lying on the ground, just stares at Izio's back. She then turns to the 2 Doritos and asks if the cowards won't fight her. One of them says it seems he'll have to handle this personally. He starts activating his mana and tells her things are about to get serious. Izio gets excited, realizing the guy is better than she expected. She gets into her stance and signals him to come. He attacks, but suddenly someone yells at them to stop. It's Hyungsuk, who jumps down from above and runs toward the bald guys. He slaps them across the face. Immediately, he yells at them, saying what they're doing is completely wrong. Regardless of how strong they were, they had already promised to fight for the people there. The 2 fools apologize, admitting their mistake. Hyungsuk orders them to pick up the fallen guys and get out of there. They leave quickly. Hyungsuk turns to the 2 and apologizes for his men acting that way. Jerem says it's fine since, in the end, the ones who got beaten were his men. He jokes that he should be the one apologizing for what happened. But Hyungsuk insists that it was their fault, so he apologizes again before leaving. Jerem is impressed by how well that guy fakes being genuinely sorry. Back in his office, Hyungsuk is amazed at the strength of a martial arts dojo master. Not to mention that the girl said the other guy was even stronger than her. He smiles, already planning to take full advantage of the 2. In the next scene, we see Izio practicing. A bunch of elders is following her, and it's been a week since they joined S.H.I.E.L.D. She tells everyone how time flies and announces that the morning training session is over. The group seems exhausted but happy. A scene shifts to the cafeteria where Jerem is cooking. The guy is still making that hearty food for everyone. What a genuinely nice guy. The group studies their band-aids while he serves the food. During this time, he and Izio have fully integrated with the people. One of the women says she feels bad for not being able to help, but she's grateful for the food. Jerem tells her not to worry. He does it because he enjoys it, so she should just eat. The woman then looks at her daughter beside her and tells her to thank the captain. Jerem activates his analysis. The girl's name is Siu Yerem, a 10-year-old with a skilled, dreaming girl. Naturally, he's curious about this ability. The girl bows and thanks Master Jerem. At this point, her favorability is maxed out and he can now steal her skill. It seems he'd spent the week being kind to her just to make this happen. He activates the transmission. A circle appears and he obtains the F-rank magical girl skill. With it, he can turn dreams into reality using mana. That day, he tested the skill, finding it both terrifying and incredibly useful. The scene shifts back to Hyungsuk and his comrades. He asks if it's true that the 2 gained the people's trust in just 1 week. Someone confirms, adding that Jerem seems to be spending more food than usual to keep everyone well fed. The leader wants to know if he's done anything beyond that. The guys say they've only been teaching martial arts and distributing food. Hyungsuk asks if they think there's some kind of angels performing miracles in this place. The man with thick eyebrows insists that he's sure they're planning something. The leader then asks if the power plant is still inaccessible. The guy says yes, it's too dangerous, but they've been keeping an eye on it. Hyungsuk says this is the perfect time to check it out to see if those 2 are truly heroes of justice or just bluffing. Sometime later, he tells the 2 that he's heard about all the good they've been doing for the survivors. On behalf of the entire squad, he wants to thank them both. Jerem says there's no need, he's just doing what he believes is right. Hyungsuk replies that he feels a great sense of honesty from them and asks if he could request a favor. The 2 grow apprehensive as he lays a map on the table. He explains that at the power plant marked on the map, there are terrifying monsters. The 2 look intrigued. A man in the back adds that they had sent an analysis team, but they lost contact with them. Jerem asks for more information. Hyungsuk shows him the communication log. The recordings reveal that the zombies there aren't ordinary and are far too strong. There are screams, and then the communication cuts off. Jerem realizes everyone sent to analyze the location is dead. Hyungsuk explains that to save more people, they need more energy. Izio immediately understands that this beast of a task is being assigned to the 2 of them. Hyungsuk confirms, saying that with their abilities, they wouldn't meet the same fate as the vigilant teams. Jerem smiles and says that if it's to save more people, he's definitely willing to do it. Hyungsuk stands, thanking them for their dedication. But as he starts to mention a reward, Jerem interrupts, saying it's unnecessary since he's doing it to help the survivors. Hyungsuk remarks that Jerem seems firm in his convictions. Later, The muscular guys question if the two will really be able to pull it off. Hyungstrike dismisses their doubts, saying it doesn't matter. If they die, it's not their problem. While they're attacking the power plant, the squad will target a hospital they've been planning to raid for a long time. Outside, Jerem and Izio talk. Izio expresses her doubts, noting that many people have died in that place. Jerem agrees about the danger, sure that there's a creature of much higher level there. But Izio says that makes it even more exciting and tells him they should get going. On the road, they're back on their bikes, heading toward the plant. When they see the sign for the plant, Jerem jokes it feels like PUBG. As they cautiously approach, Jerem suddenly tells Izio to wait. Something is leaping toward them. It's an albino ghoul, jaws wide, ready to devour them. Jerem quickly realizes these are evolved ghouls. He launches an attack with his chain, but the creatures are covered in energy. He hadn't expected these creatures to have mastered electricity. They unleash a combined triple attack, sending electricity through Jerem's chain and shocking his arm. Stunned, he freezes, similar to Pikachu, as the monsters rush at him again. Izio calls out and moves to help. The creatures launch another attack, but she manages to raise a barrier. She tries to hold them off, but the monsters overwhelm her, and she takes a hit. It doesn't last long before they're back aiming to bite Jerem. He lowers his head to shield himself, but takes a blow to the chest. The monsters aren't just electrically charged, they're intelligent. Jerem realizes there's only one way out of this. He hesitates to use a particular ability, but decides there's no other choice, vowing to kill the creatures. He performs a dance-like move, activating his transformation. It's the power of the magical girl skill, which momentarily confuses enemies during transformation. Jerem's weapon begins to manifest, but it's not what anyone expected. It's a bow adorned with ribbons. Embarrassed, he promises to make those monsters pay. Luckily, the magical outfit is invisible, sparing him further humiliation. He raises his wand and mutters, "Abracadabra, help me withstand electricity." The wand grants him an electricity resistance buff. Though still looking ridiculous, he lands a strike on one of the monster's heads. Izio, watching from the ground, is baffled. The first monster is sent flying and the second charges at Jerem. He ducks and strikes it in the ribs, cutting it in half. The last creature leaps to conjure an electric attack, but Jerem advances, unharmed thanks to his resistance. Confused, the monster takes another blow to the head and falls. With all three creatures down, Izio approaches and asks what just happened. Jerem, with a serious face, says it was a transformation. Still puzzled, Izio asks if all awakened ones have the ability to transform. Jerem explains that some do, and that's how he obtained the wand. Curious, she asks if it's possible for her to gain such an ability as well. Jerem says she just needs to imitate what he did. Izio asks if that means copying the dance moves. He confirms, telling her to do exactly what he did. Izio, taking it seriously, raises her arms and calls for the transformation. However, after a while, she realizes nothing is happening. Jerem bursts out laughing in her face while she, blushing furiously, demands to know why it's not working for her. Our hero explains that the transformation only worked because of a specific skill he possesses. Now enraged, Izio declares she's going to end him. But before she can act, he raises his wand and grants her an electric resistance buff as well. With a bump forming on his head from her retaliation, she orders him to forget everything he just saw. Jerem promises he already has, reassuring her not to worry. He then activates healing magic for both of them, curing their injuries. He pulls a couple of drinks from his inventory and hands one to her, explaining that it will help. It's a nutritional tonic that increases stamina by 10%. She comments that it looks normal but tastes surprisingly good. Jerem explains he mixed energy drinks with vitamins and medicines for the concoction. Now that they're recovered, he says it's time to move forward. They continue through the power plant and quickly encounter more albino ghouls. The creatures like Pikachu leap at them, but now with the resistance buff, the fight is manageable. Izio punches one in the face, while another attacks from the side. She dodges, kicks it, and lands another hit. She notes how, not long ago, she would have had no chance in such a fight. But thanks to Jerem's abilities, everything has changed. Curious, she asks if he can use any other types of magic with the wand. He replies that he checked, but it seems the wand only allows one magic per transformation. What they don't notice is that they're being observed from above. Jerem suddenly senses the presence of something. It's another albino ghoul which appears to retreat. Izio wonders aloud if the reconnaissance team was attacked by these creatures. They're strong, but it's strange that no one survived. Jerem suggests that an important structure like this must house something even stronger. She points upward and asks, like that, for example. Sure enough, there's a massive albino creature with a golden crystal embedded in its head, resembling something out of Attack on Titan. Jerem agrees, noting it doesn't look easy to handle. The monster opens its mouth and begins to draw in air. To their shock, it unleashes an energy beam like a Kamehameha. Jerem quickly activates a wooden structure, creating a totem for defense, but it's completely obliterated, leaving him injured. Izio smirks, reminding him not to laugh at her when he's in the same state. She glares at the monster, declaring she'll get revenge. The scene shifts to the monster charging at them. It claps its hands together, releasing another electric attack, but the two manage to jump away in time. Jerem activates his blue dragon chain, wrapping it around the monster's neck. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Izio strikes its mouth. As Jerem tightens the chain, he kicks the creature's foot, causing wooden spikes to emerge, sending it into a frenzy. The beast roars, summoning more creatures to the area. Izio says she'll handle them, but Jerem assures her his weapon is perfect for causing a massacre. He spins the chain wildly, taking out zombies left and right. Izio watches, feeling useless as the larger creature writhes under the onslaught. Seeing immobilized, she seizes the chance, leaping to deliver a final blow, a powerful kick to its chest. The scene shifts to the mountains, where a man observes everything from a distance, impressed. He reports back to the base, confirming that the two were successful. At the base, the news spreads quickly. Hyung-suk can't believe not only that they succeeded, but that they did so incredibly fast. He starts imagining how having these two on his team could make him second in command in no time. As he revels in this thought, someone appears behind the informant and asks if he's done sending the message. The man jumps in surprise and turns to see Jerem and Izio. The poor guy hadn't expected to be caught so easily. Jerem tells him not to be too surprised. He'd suspected they weren't the only ones there. He acknowledges that it's natural for people to send observers to track their results. The informant nervously agrees, admitting that's exactly why he was there. However, Jerem admits how strange it is that he sent his report in secret. He pressures the man, who begins to feel intimidated. The man insists that they trust Squad 3 completely. He claims he stayed quiet to avoid interfering with their hunt. Jerem asks if he's certain about that. The man reassures him, saying all he wanted was to keep the two free to act. Jerem smirks, admitting he hadn't thought of it that way. He appreciates having people so concerned for him. He then asks if the man has eaten, to which the informant says no. Jerem invites him to share a meal, pointing out it's dangerous to be out here alone. They light a fire, warm some food, and Jerem serves a feast. The man thanks him and begins eating, praising Jerem for behaving exactly as he did in the village. He comments on how incredible their battles always are and asks Jerem to explain more about them. The man says he can't really explain well because Jerem is just too fast. At least the guy didn't seem to have much idea about his powers. The clueless man gives a thumbs up, saying he's sure the two of them are incredible. And so the three eat under the moonlight. Meanwhile, Hyung-suk wonders if what they showed at the power plant was their full strength. If they were even stronger, they wouldn't need to keep hiding from Omega. This pair might really be his ticket to the top. Now that the power plant mission was a success, there was only one thing left. He asks for an update on the hospital attack. His men inform him that 2 squads have already entered, but communication was cut off due to unstable internet in the area. However, based on the last reports, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Hyung-suk feels excited. 2 successful attacks on the same day would be perfect for his plans. He orders his team to pass along instructions for them to proceed slowly since time is on their side. The scene shifts to the hospital. Someone grabs a huge zombie by the mouth. It's the tight-shirted squad. The creature falls to the ground, and one of them stomps on its head. As they move with the team, one of them asks about communication with Squad 2. He's told the last message was received 30 minutes ago when they reached the 11th floor. The man glances upward, remarking that his friend is too impatient. They should take this step by step. Another reassures him, saying the leader is very skilled, so there's no need to worry. But that's when the ground begins to shake. A voice comes over the radio, urgently requesting reinforcements for the 13th floor. The man immediately tells the team they need to move quickly. They start climbing the stairs, encountering another large zombie on the way. A punch to the face takes it down. As they approach the door to the 13th floor, he tells everyone to prepare since they don't know what's behind it. The team looks tense, and naturally, the shield bearers take the lead. As they enter, they comment that nothing is in sight. Someone whispers that whatever's there must be hiding among them. Suddenly, they hear a cry for help. One of the men recognizes it as the leader's voice and rushes toward the sound. By the door, a figure begs for assistance. In the middle of what looks like a stage, the person is kneeling, pleading for help. As the group approaches, one of the helmeted men tells the leader to stay calm. But when the flashlight illuminates the figure, they see something controlling its head. The creature speaks, saying it has finally found the rest of them. They realize too late that it's a trap. The doors slam shut, and more of their former comrades appear. The ceiling is entirely consumed by what looks like flesh. The leader shouts for everyone to start shooting. They fire on their former allies while the leader yells that they need to get out of there. Suddenly, someone attacks from behind. The leader turns, cursing, and transforms into a wolf. He slashes at the attacker's face, sending him flying. But the man evades and laughs. Tentacles begin descending from the ceiling, wrapping around everyone's necks. The leader turns to see several heading his way. With so many of his men dying around him, he realizes he made a grave mistake entering the 13th floor. The attacker doesn't let him escape easily, leaping toward him. Back at the base, Hyung-suk grows impatient. He asks if there's any new information, but his men say there's still no contact. Since the squads ascended a few more floors, communication has been lost entirely. Just then, they receive a report from the leader of Squad 1 requesting a response. Hyung-suk grabs the microphone, asking for an update on the attack. The leader reports that they've reached the top floor but are facing a small issue. They'll need many more awakened fighters. Hyung-suk feels uneasy since if even that guy can't handle it, it must be serious. He tells the leader to hold out as long as possible while he arranges reinforcements. Unbeknownst to him, the leader's mind is already under control and he thanks Hyung-suk for the reinforcements. Back with Jerem's group, they've just finished their meal. The informant thanks them for the food and says he's heading off, but then he receives a message over the radio saying there's trouble at the hospital. He's told to request assistance from the third squad as this order comes directly from the chief. The man acknowledges and heads over to Jerem, asking if he can help. Jerem agrees and asks for the hospital's location. The next scene shows them speeding on a motorcycle, arriving at the site of the massacre. Jerem asks if it was the leader of Squad 1 who called for reinforcements. The man confirms it was him, using the walkie-talkie to request more awakened fighters. Jerem finds it odd and asks to speak with the chief. Hyungshuk picks up the microphone, asking what the problem is. Jerem asks if, aside from himself and Izio, the remaining squad members together equal at least 10% of the group's total strength. Though confused by the question, Hyungshuk answers no, as the two leaders are also quite strong. Jerem then wants to know why the leader made such a request. If weaker awakened fighters were enough, there'd be no reason to call for everyone. Hyungshuk replies that in an emergency, even a cat can sometimes be useful. Our boy, however, says that if he were in the leader's position, he would have requested the support of Squad 3, not everyone. The man asks what he's trying to say. Jerem replies that the request seems too vague and illogical for someone genuinely in trouble. This whole thing about sending as many awakened fighters as possible doesn't add up. Hyungshuk grows thoughtful. It really is odd. The leader of Squad 1 asked for multiple awakened fighters but didn't specifically request Jerem, the strongest. Jerem says he already knows the worst-case scenario. He explains that for a hunter, there's nothing better than weak prey. Hyungshuk pauses, understanding what he means. He asks if Jerem is suggesting that the squad leader was already defeated and that this is just a trap to lure more people in. Jerem says it's just a possibility, but one that can't be ignored. The man seems confused, wondering how a monster could imitate a human. Jerem responds that in an apocalyptic world full of zombies, nothing is unexpected. He then asks if they've been speaking directly with the leader of Squad 1. The others confirm they haven't. Jerem nods and says they'll head up now, but they should be prepared in case his suspicions are correct. The man agrees. Jerem calls over another man and asks if he wants to join them. Naturally, the man isn't foolish and says it doesn't seem like the right place for him to be. Jerem replies that he'll keep the walkie-talkie since he'll need to stay in contact with the chief. The man teaches him the frequency and wishes him luck. With that, the pair enter the hospital. Once inside, Izio asks if this is really a good idea. If their suspicions are correct, the place has been overrun by monsters. She's convinced that the leader of Squad 1 isn't the only one who was defeated here. Jerem knows that for him, this place is safe, but that's not the case for Izio. To ensure her safety, he decides she needs an upgrade. He remembers the stone he took from the park's creature earlier. Opening his inventory, he retrieves the gem and hands it to her. She looks shocked, asking if it's even more precious than the red one. He explains that she already defeated a giant ghoul and that he'd feel much more at ease with an even stronger comrade. Hesitantly, she takes it, agreeing to use it. The gem surrounds her in a golden light and she feels her body filling with strength. She thanks him and Jerem says it's just a reward for all the hard work she's done. They continue their path and come across someone with half their head eaten, completely brainless. As they climb the same stairs as before, they hear some noises. 3 zombies are coming their way. Izio tells Jerem not to worry, saying she'll handle it. She delivers a marvelous kick, and even though there are more than 3, they all fall. The creatures are split in half, and Izio confidently looks back at Jerem. At the door to the 13th floor, they recognize it as the source of the distress call. Jerem asks if Izio is ready, and she confidently says yes. The door slowly opens, and they cautiously step inside. From within, they hear a cry for help. Izio says it's the voice of the Squad 1 leader, but Jerem immediately realizes it's a trap. She asks how he's so sure, and he explains that unless someone is suicidal, they wouldn't scream for help in the middle of a hallway. She acknowledges that it makes sense and asks what they'll do. Jerem tells her to stay close as they move forward. He pulls out his chain from the inventory and advances through the hallway. Izio suggests collapsing the entire structure instead of walking into a clear trap. Jerem considers it but says he has a better idea. They enter the room where the cries are coming from. At the far end, a figure is calling for help. From a distance, Jerem asks if it's the leader of Squad 1. The leader responds, claiming his leg is injured and he needs help to move. Jerem simply raises his arm and activates the chain's transformation. The leader looks confused, blinded by a purple light. Jerem had activated the F-rank magic wand, putting the figure in a state of confusion. He then conjures a spell for a flammable oil attack and launches it at the leader. Before the figure can react, Jerem ignites the oil with the fire chain. Immediately, everything in the room starts melting. A strange wolf-like creature attempts to approach Jerem, but he quickly activates a wooden barrier, trapping everyone inside. Jerem declares that they can all now experience the cauldron. Inside, flames spread rapidly, even reaching the ceiling. The creatures claw at the walls in desperation, but the wood is too sturdy. As the fire consumes them, their bodies blister, and they begin to wail. With little oxygen left, they can barely move, suffocating as flames engulf them. Their agonized howls echo as they are reduced to ash. Outside, Jerem and Izio wait. He asks if she's ready, and she confidently says yes. Once again, Jerem uses a combination of mental control and fear to activate mental pressure. At that moment, the wooden wall is destroyed and the 2 guys emerge. As soon as they see Jerem, they leap toward him. However, he throws a flashbang, activating mental pressure. Izio advances and lands a punch squarely on the first one's face. Jerem detaches his chains and smashes the second one's head with a hammer-like strike. The creatures barely leave the room before collapsing to the ground. However, their bodies start being pulled by the entity attached to their heads. Izio yells, "Not today," and slices through both of them. The two former leaders revert back to their original forms. She's impressed, noting that the situation could have been extremely dangerous, but thanks to Jerem's strategy, it was surprisingly smooth. She comments on how Jerem seems to have several unique abilities. He explains that it all comes from a single skill. She then asks how they're going to put out all the fire to enter the room. Jerem explains that in a concrete building like this, the fire will eventually burn itself out. Time passes. The room is filled with smoke, and Jerem is certain that no one could have survived. Something on the ground catches their attention, a golden stone. Izio wonders if it came from the main body. Jerem picks it up, confirming her suspicion. However, she comments that it seems less powerful than the stone he gave her earlier. Jerem responds that it appears the main body wasn't as dangerous as they initially thought. Izio asks if more creatures as dangerous as this one will start appearing frequently. He says yes, which is why they'll need to be increasingly cautious. But for now, it's time to head back. In a display of humility, Jerem even retrieves the bodies of the two fallen men. Later, Hyung-suk approaches the pair. He admits he had no idea there were monsters capable of controlling people. He tells the duo that if it weren't for their kindness, the entire squad would have been wiped out. He promises never to forget the kindness they've shown. But before anything else, he needs to report this to the higher-ups. He asks them to wait for a moment, and Jerem agrees. As Hyung-suk walks away, Izio comments that his attitude seems to be changing. Jerem explains that it's obvious. Hyung-suk lost everyone who was extremely useful to him. Now backed into a corner, he's in a desperate situation. She realizes that to him, they are now his only solution. Jerem sees this as a perfect opportunity. They'll replace the fallen team members, get closer to the higher-ups, and infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D. even further. At this rate, they'll enter the so-called paradise in no time. The door opens, and Hyung-suk asks if they can talk for a moment. Jerem agrees, and the scene shifts to the reception area. Hyung-suk explains that he spoke with the higher-ups and mentioned the duo's performance. Jerem seems intrigued. Hyung-suk says he understands they don't want public recognition, but he couldn't provide false information to the team. As a result, the commander wants to meet them. Jerem hesitates, asking if they really need to meet in person. Hyung-suk confirms, explaining that the commander is extremely busy, so they'll need to deliver the information themselves. Jerem agrees, asking when they'll go. Hyung-suk assures him it will be in 2 or 3 days and transportation will be provided. Izio then asks what life is like in this so-called paradise. Hyung-suk explains that nothing in this world is as good as it was before the accident, but there's no safer place in Korea than paradise right now. Izio expresses her excitement at hearing this. Hyung-suk tells her she'll understand once she sees it, and he's certain she won't be disappointed. Man, Hyung-suk really knows how to fake being a nice guy when a snake. A while later, the duo is resting outside. It won't be long before they meet Lee Sang-cheol, and Jerem knows he needs to be prepared. He opens his inventory, wondering if it's possible to further enhance his transmission skill. The system asks if he wants to use the 2 stones he received to upgrade the ability. Finally, Jerem is getting what he needs most. Izio asks if he's really going to use them now. Jerem says yes, things are getting dangerous, and he needs more power. The transmission skill is upgraded from rank E to rank D. His mana is significantly increased, and his skeletal structure is optimized for combat. Surrounded by glowing light, Jerem emerges, now 50 centimeters taller. Izio covers her face, laughing as she jokes that he's made her look tiny. Jerem counters that it's actually him who grew taller. Confused, Izio asks what happened. Jerem explains that it's a bone growth enhancement ability. She teases him, saying that even though he's taller, he still looks like a fool. Annoyed, Jerem snaps back at her. The system then notifies him that he can now level up abilities obtained through quests. Curious, Jerem checks the quest rewards and finds that Izio is interested in how he fights. If he can battle mana to mana with her until she's 100% satisfied, he'll unlock the Diosan martial arts skill. Jerem tells her to come at him, he's ready to fight without mana. Izio hesitates, reminding him that, unlike him, she's a martial artist. But she warns him that if he's serious, he can't regret it later. Jerem says it's perfect and the place is ideal for this fight. Izio gets ready and announces she's coming for him. Jerem is excited to witness the true skill of a martial arts master. She comes at him with a dangerous and stunning kick, but Jerem manages to block it. He's shocked at how much power her slender legs pack. It's heavier than he expected. He tries to grab her leg, but she pulls it back, saying she won't let that happen. With a punch to his arm, she sends Jerem flying. Before he can recover, she leaps at him with another beautiful attack. A heel strike he barely blocks, falling to his knees. Just as he regains balance, she spins around for another strike. Jerem looks nervous, but there's a strange calmness in his expression. He counters her kick with a punch, causing an explosion of force. Izio was impressed that he can exert so much strength without even preparing. Jerem goes for another punch, but Izio floats into the air. As she lands, Jerem is already charging toward her. She dodges and smugly says that this is what true martial arts look like, landing a palm strike to his stomach. The impact leaves a visible mark, almost like a tattoo, on Jerem. Panicked at the idea of losing, Jerem retaliates with a quick combination of attacks. But Aizo's movements are too smooth and fluid. As she lands another palm strike, Jerem is fascinated, trying to understand her techniques. At that moment, Aizo grows confident, too confident. Suddenly, Jerem grabs her arms and she realizes her mistake. He declares that victory is his now. But Aizo changes her expression, aiming a kick at his weak spot. Jerem merely saves future generations at the last second. He yells at her, demanding to know what she's doing. Aizo looks embarrassed, pretending not to understand his frustration. Jerem shouts, asking if she's trying to turn him into a eunuch. She reassures him that the power of the kick was adjusted. With her legs still trapped, she warns him that zombies can attack there, so he better be prepared. Jerem firmly denies this, saying zombies don't attack there. He then questions what kind of forbidden martial art she's been learning. Izio defends herself, claiming she had no choice since her hands were restrained. Jerem scolds her, saying it's outrageous to use such a move just because of that. Izio finally admits she's tired and concedes defeat, though her satisfaction with the fight is only at 20%. Nearby, a group of onlookers stares at them, mistaking their sparring for something romantic. The spectators murmur that young love is in the air. Later, the pair is sparring again and the same group of odd observers watches them. Jerem grows suspicious, wondering what's going on with these people. He overhears someone saying that their fight looks intense and close. Flustered, Jerem wonders what rumors are spreading. He notices Izio might have overheard and immediately dashes away. She chases after him, but instead of following, she confronts the bystanders, explaining they misunderstood the situation. She assures them she would never do anything so shameless. The men apologize, afraid of upsetting her, and promise to be more careful with their words. Izio, satisfied with their apology, says she won't punish anyone this time. Jerem, however, thinks her reaction will only make the rumors worse. Izio asks if he heard what they were saying, and he admits he only caught part of it. She tells him not to worry, claiming she's made sure the rumors won't spread. Jerem, unconvinced, is sure this will only escalate things. When asked where he's going, Jerem says he's heading to see Jerem. Izio is curious as she had forgotten about the little girl. When they meet Jerem, she excitedly asks where they're going. Jerem asks her if she dreams of becoming a magical girl. Jerem enthusiastically says yes because magical girls can defeat villains with ease. She pulls out a little book from her bag, asking if Jerem wants to read it. Feeling awkward, Jerem agrees, saying he'll read it with her. He then takes out a red stone and offers it to Jerem, explaining that if she holds it and says awaken, she can become a magical girl. Jerem asks if he's sure and Jerem confirms. Excited, Jerem takes the stone and says she'll do it. The system appears and she confirms her desire to awaken. She becomes surrounded by a blue energy and moments later, she declares that the process worked. Jerem asks if she wants to test her abilities and she eagerly agrees. She pulls out a magical girl toy from her bag, tosses it into the air, and activates her transformation. The room fills with light as Jerem is enveloped in a glowing cocoon. When the light fades, she is transformed into the heroine of justice. Jerem is struck by how adorable she looks, and even Izio is thinking the same. Izio hugs Jerem, asking how she can be so cute. Jerem pouts, insisting that she's not cute, she's cool. Izio gently cups Jerem's face, agreeing and calling her a cool girl. Izio asks if Jerem knows how to use her abilities. Jerem confidently says yes, demonstrating as glowing platforms appear beneath her feet. In an instant, she begins to float, her staff extending into a broomstick as she zooms through the sky. Returning to Jerem, she excitedly shows off her abilities. Jerem, ever the opportunist, already knows that with Jerem's powers, zombies will never be able to catch him. The system indicates that Jerem is witnessing the demonstration of an expert, but his comprehension is only at 35%. Izio asks Jerem if she can do other magical girl tricks. Jerem confidently says yes and starts flying, activating a shared flight spell. All three of them begin to float in the sky. Jerem explains that she can use up to 4 additional special abilities besides this one. Jerem, who is skilled and loaded with abilities himself, is impressed. He hadn't expected her awakening to be so powerful. That's when a fat zombie emerges from behind a tree, roaring in front of the trio. Jerem figures the zombie spotted Jerem as soon as she started flying. But Jerem stretches out her staff and declares she'll show them her power. She strikes the ground, calling upon nature for help. The earth begins to corrode, and suddenly a stone golem rises. This magical girl is ridiculously strong. The zombie seems confused as the golem pounds its chest. However, as the zombie charges forward, it takes a hit to the mouth. The zombie swings back with a hammer-like blow. The golem defends with ease and lands another strike to the face. The fight gets intense as the zombie retaliates. Jerem asks if the golem is her magic. She responds that it's actually just a friend. Jerem uses his analysis skill and sees that it's indeed the first day of the golem's creation, marked as an F-rank magical companion. Jerem urges her friend to keep fighting, encouraging it to win. The golem receives a stone skin buff. Jerem thinks it's one of the few times a buff like this actually makes perfect sense. Jerem adds a strength buff and an agility buff, and the golem leaps at the zombie. With a single blow to the zombie's stomach, it slams the creature into a wall. Jerem's understanding of magical girls reaches 100%, and his power advances to rank E. He thinks to himself that all of this has been more than worth it. Jerem thanks the golem for its help, and the golem happily dissolves back into the ground. Jerem reveals that she obtained a stone during the battle. Jerem congratulates her, suggesting she use it. Since she earned it with her own power, it's a good way to grow stronger. Jerem bows and thanks him. Jerem reflects that with this much strength, Jerem won't have trouble protecting herself. At least now, he can leave the base for a few hours without worrying so much. The scene shifts to Kyung-suk, who announces that the car is ready for the two of them. A man opens the door, inviting them inside. Once everyone is settled, he announces they're heading to paradise. Sometime later, they arrive in another city. Strangely, it looks like an ordinary city, bustling with people and everything functioning normally. As they step out of the car, the driver informs them that the commander is waiting for them inside. At the door, someone informs the commander that the two awakened individuals he discussed have arrived. In the back of the room, it's clear who it is. Lee Sang-cheol welcomes Kyung-suk. The subordinate bows and asks how the commander is doing, congratulating him and mentioning how hard he's been working. Meanwhile, Jerem activates his rank E analysis skill. Lee Sang-cheol, 44 years old, is a D-rank human. Unsurprisingly, he's a consumer of human magical stones and possesses a unique ability called the Dominator. The fact that Sang-cheol has a skill makes things more complicated. However, his behavior aligns with Jerem's observations. Sang-cheol is far better at defense than offense. Jerem wonders how this man managed to expand his territory so much. If Sang-cheol had a combat-enhancing ability, he wouldn't act this defensively. This implies he either gains power by controlling others or through territorial expansion. To Jerem, either option works in his favor. Kyung-suk introduces Jerem and Izio, explaining they are the individuals he mentioned. Sang-cheol steps forward, saying he's heard they did excellent work. Jerem humbly responds that they only did what was necessary. Sang-cheol praises his humility and invites them to follow him. The pair, however, remain cautious. Outside the building, people are loading boxes into a truck. Suddenly, their expressions change. A snake-like creature and a zombie are creeping up behind them. Before one of the men can react, he's crushed against the truck, killed in an instant. Another man tries to shout a warning, but is silenced when the snake's tongue pierces his mouth. Jerem notes that the snake appears to absorb the man's brain, gaining his knowledge. The snake slams the corpse against a wall and lets out a roar, sending shockwaves upward. This attracts all the other snakes and zombies nearby. The scene shifts back to Sang-cheol, who says he had an enjoyable conversation with Jerem. Jerem agrees, stating he felt the same. Sang-cheol shakes their hands, expressing his hope that they'll visit again. Kyung-suk, however, isn't pleased with how close Jerem has become to the commander. He's shocked that Jerem gained so much trust in such a short time. It was also the first time Kyung-suk saw the commander laugh so much in one meeting. Clearly, Sang-cheol wants to grow even closer to them. Sang-cheol tells Kyung-suk that now that he's been promoted, if anything happens to Jerem or Izio, he should inform him immediately. Kyung-suk bows, promising to do his best to support the two. As they head back to the car, Jerem congratulates Kyung-suk, jokingly asking if he should start calling him General now. Kyung-suk responds that there's no need to be so formal and Jerem can just call him Kyung-suk. A man brings over a box and Kyung-suk explains that it's a reward from the commander. Inside, it's packed with zombie stones that Jerem knows will be useful for his village. Jerem thanks him and Kyung-suk says he hopes they can work even closer together now. With this trust secured, Jerem has completed the first stage of his plan. Little by little, he will gain more skills and continue advancing. But then a man comes running, announcing emergency. Kyung-suk asks what happened, and the man reports that a wave of zombies is approaching the satellite village. Both Jerem and Kyung-suk are confused as no one had any prior warning. The man explains that it appeared out of nowhere, and worse, there are creatures they'd never seen before. Jerem knows this satellite village is nearby and realizes Jerem is in danger. He urgently asks Kyung-suk for the fastest bike available. Kyung-suk agrees and tells him to follow. At the front of the building, a group of armed people with shields is ready to defend. One of them, the survivor from earlier, seems to have become a hero. Another man informs them that the creatures have already entered another village. It's the worst-case scenario as Squad 3 isn't present and they likely can't withstand an attack from monsters they've never seen before. Jerem stands nearby, watching everything unfold. Determined, she knows that if Jerem were there, he'd help everyone. She approaches the troops and calls out to the leader, asking if she can help. The leader shouts at his men, reminding them that their job is to evacuate the civilians, not let children fight. But Jerem insists that she's awakened and has abilities. The leader is taken aback as no one knew this about her. She confirms her abilities and begs him to let her assist. Curious, the leader asks what kind of powers she has. Jerem explains that she can use transformation magic. Understandably, he's skeptical. Just then, the warning comes that the zombies are approaching. Massive snakes lead the charge, followed by hordes of zombies. The creatures are larger than buildings, and the troops immediately realize they stand no chance. At least 5 giant snakes are advancing. Raising his club, the leader orders his men to fight until reinforcements from paradise arrive. He tells them to open fire and give it everything they've got as if it's their last day on Earth. The snakes move first, but suddenly, a purple energy appears in the courtyard. Jerem ascends into the sky, surrounded by an explosion of mana. She looks even stronger than Jerem himself. The squad leader shouts at his men to focus and keep firing despite the distraction. Gunfire erupts, but the bullets barely harm the snakes, which continue their advance. The troops shout that it's useless if their weapons can't penetrate. With a single attack, the snakes break through the gate and begin entering the village. But then a purple Kamehameha erupts, electrocuting the snakes. The general encourages his men, reminding them they have an awakened fighter on their side and not to lose hope. Incredible. A battalion of men carried by a little girl. The snakes keep advancing and panic spreads as the soldiers cry out that they're all going to die. The general silences them, demanding they focus all their energy on defending the village. They had no choice. If they failed, everyone would die. Jerem summons her golem behind the troops, urging them not to give up, saying that together they can win. She starts casting strength and speed buffs on the soldiers. The captain feels a surge of power, confident they can hold out longer. When the snakes slam into their shields, the troops manage to hold the line. The captain seizes the moment, landing a powerful strike on one snake's head. The golem takes on another, slamming it into the ground. But more zombies and snakes continue to flood in. The troops struggle to maintain their defenses, managing to take down a few with their bullets. The snakes attack relentlessly, and despite feeling they might win at this rate, the general notices something troubling. The snakes are growing stronger. One charges toward Jerem, who has run out of mana. As the snake lunges to bite her, Jerem closes her eyes. When she opens them, she sees two figures standing in front of her. Jerem and Izio had arrived. Jerem tells her to rest, noticing how exhausted she looks. He praises her efforts and asks if she's hurt. Jerem runs to him, admitting she was terrified. Jerem reassures her, saying it's thanks to her that lives were saved. Facing the snakes, Jerem declares it's their turn now. He observes the snakes and remarks that they resemble the creatures they fought at the hospital. Perhaps they've come seeking revenge for their fallen comrades. Suddenly, the 5 snakes merge into one colossal entity, now with a massive glowing crystal on its forehead. Izio smirks, saying this fight is finally worth it. Jerem agrees, but suggests they first test its strength. The pair charge forward. From a distance, the squad leader warns them to be careful. Jerem, with his blue fire dragon, engages the snake. It's as if the quality of the battle has skyrocketed. The visuals feel sharper and more detailed. The fiery dragon coils around the massive snake as Izio descends from above, preparing a double spinning kick. She announces that she'll strike with the full weight of her core. As the dragon immobilizes the snake, Izio lands her attack squarely on its head. The snake crashes to the ground, causing an explosion in the middle of the park. From afar, the onlookers are stunned, while Jerem and Izio remain calm. However, the snake quickly rises again, letting out another furious roar. Izio remarks that it seems pretty angry now. Once more, the duo charges forward, their attacks triggering more explosions. Jerem watches from the side, utterly amazed. They dodge an attack, and Izio lands a kick to the snake's side while Jerem whips his chain around its neck. The snake falls to the ground again, and Jerem thinks to herself how cool the two of them look together. But the snake rises yet again, stubborn to the end. This time, it closes its mouth, preparing something new. Jerem, analyzing its pattern, realizes a different attack is coming. Instead of striking, the snake spews a torrent of blood into the air. The blood rains down, landing on nearby zombies, causing them to transform. The newly enhanced zombies begin charging toward the pair. The squad leader orders his men to assist Team 3, but their bullets are useless against the reinforced zombies. One soldier observes that their skin is as tough as the snakes, but Izio simply stretches her leg and delivers a crescent kick. The zombies are effortlessly sliced in half by the chain, leaving the pavement littered with bodies. The squad leader is in disbelief at how strong the duo is, but the snake's remains start moving independently, reassembling into its original form. Though battered, it looks intact. Suddenly, it changes direction, attempting to flee. Jerem declares that if it's trying to escape, it's time to end this. He and Izio give chase. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Hyung-seok rides in a truck with reinforcements, not expecting to encounter a creature with a yellow core so soon. All he wants is for Team 3 to hold out long enough. He urges his men to prepare for the battlefield and not disappoint him. The troops shout their understanding as the convoy pushes forward. When they finally arrive at the base, the soldiers note that it already seems secure. The other commander approaches Hyung-seok, who asks where the monster is. The commander explains that it escaped and Team 3 is in pursuit. It shouldn't take long. Just then, an explosion occurs behind the building. Hyung-seok orders reinforcements to assist Team 3 while they secure the base. However, as the men agree, 2 figures appear from behind. It's Jerem and Izio. The commander asks if the creature got away, and Hyung-seok also wants to know what happened. Jerem calmly replies that it's been dealt with. The commander can't believe it and asks if he means the monster with the yellow core in its head. Jerem reveals the yellow core as proof. Hyung-seok finds himself in a dilemma. Everyone had heard rumors about Jerem being a true monster in disguise. Jerem casually suggests that their arrival is perfect for helping with reconstruction efforts. The scene shifts to Paradise's base, where guards stand bored at the gates. Suddenly, one of them spots the Hammer Gang approaching Mad Max style. One guard grabs his walkie-talkie, urgently calling for reinforcements. At the front of the convoy, the bald leader, Quack Duple, stands atop a truck resembling Optimus Prime. He mocks the guards, asking if they really think this setup can stop them. Quack Duple, leader of the Hammer Gang, laughs and declares that Sanctuel is finished. He orders his men to accelerate. It's time to avenge their fallen comrades. The convoy speeds toward the gates as the guards desperately begin firing. But Quack activates his unique ability, vehicle modification. Suddenly, his truck transforms, sprouting two massive arms that slam into the gate. The Hammer Gang cheers, telling their boss not to steal all the glory as their own vehicles begin transforming. Meanwhile, back at the satellite village, Jerem is using her magic to assist with repairs. Those who were exhausted suddenly feel revitalized and much stronger. Even Hyungshuk is impressed by the little girl's contributions. Productivity has increased tenfold thanks to her presence. He thanks Jerem, saying she's helping to ease the village's burdens. Jerem modestly replies that she's only helping because Jerem asked her to and she likes helping others. Curious, Hyungshuk asks if she was originally awakened. Jerem reveals that she wasn't. Her awakening happened thanks to Jerem. Hyungshuk grows suspicious. Why is Jerem the only child in the camp to have awakened? It's almost as if Jerem somehow knew she could awaken. When he pats her head, Jerem pulls away, saying only Jerem is allowed to do that. Hyungshuk apologizes, joking that he's jealous of Jerem. Inwardly, he's unsettled. Jerem has immense strength, popularity, and charisma. Could it be that he also has an ability to recognize potential awakenings in others? If so, it's a secret Jerem would have to take to the grave. At that moment, a man arrives reporting an attack by the Hammer Gang on Paradise. Hyungshuk looks visibly shaken and Jerem overhears the conversation. Hyungshuk asks who this Hammer Gang is and the man explains that it's a notorious group he knows from his nightmares. Jerem steps closer, asking if they're as bad as S.H.I.E.L.D. The man responds that they're far worse, infamous for their madness and extreme brutality. The scene flashes back to a nightmare Jerem once lived, a group of people running from zombies in the 42nd nightmare. A chain slices through one zombie as Jerem shouts for everyone to flee. In those days, he tried to save as many people as possible, which kept him constantly busy. But then someone behind him pointed at something and asked, "What's that?" Across the street stood the infamous Hammer Gang and their Optimus Prime-like trucks. Survivors raised their hands, pleading for help, but the trucks only sped up, barreling toward everyone. The survivors quickly realized the gang wasn't slowing down. At the helm, Quack Duple showed no intention of stopping. The trucks collided with zombies and survivors alike. The ground became littered with bodies. Duple approached Jerem, remarking that the boy was lucky to survive. Jerem turned to him, asking how he could call himself human after doing this to survivors. Duple feigned innocence, claiming he thought they were all zombies. He justified his actions by saying he was certain they had been bitten and killed them to prevent risk. Jerem yelled that it made no sense to assume that without checking first. Duple retorted, asking if Jerem was willing to take responsibility for the risk his men would face. If not, he should shut up. That was Jerem's first encounter with Duple. Back in the present, Aizu expresses her disbelief that someone would run over survivors. Jerem assures her he knows how terrible these people are. At that moment, Hyungshuk receives an urgent report about a terrorist attack and requests immediate assistance. Jerem tells Aizu they'll head out on the bike, calling her to join him. They speed down the road. Along the way, Jerem asks if she heard the details. He activates his invisibility skill, surprising Aizu. Upon arriving at the scene, they see Optimus Prime-like trucks tearing apart the base. A direct battle between Duple and Sanctuel is underway, a clash of titans in their later years. Despite his age, Sanctuel leaps into action, activating his rain skill, which allows him to draw strength from his subordinates. He strikes Duple with a powerful blow to the knee, channeling power through his staff. Electricity crackles, forcing Duple to step back. Sanctuel regrets not dealing with these people sooner. Jerem activates his analysis ability. Duple's vehicle is revealed to be an E-rank item enhanced with skills and magical stones. Duple himself is an E-rank mana user specializing in mechanics. Duple taunts Sanctuel, asking how long he'll keep running like a rat. Sanctuel counters, reminding him who ran away last time. Enraged, Duple vows to kill Sanctuel today for what he did to his brother. His right arm morphs into a flamethrower, unleashing an attack. Sanctuel, unfazed, spins his staff, borrowing more power from his men. The flames dissipate as Sanctuel holds his ground, but Duple presses on. Just as things heat up, a blue chain slices through Duple's mechanical contraption, tearing it apart. Duple is stunned, unable to comprehend who could be stronger than Sanctuel. Jerem and Aizu step forward, asking if the commander is alright. Sanctuel praises Jerem's timing, instructing him to end the terrorist threat. Duple, realizing the tables have turned, grows visibly anxious. In the next scene, Duple is captured, bound at Sanctuel's mercy. Sanctuel thanks Jerem and Aizu, crediting them for minimizing casualties. For Jerem, this is perfect. The commander's favorability has exceeded the limit, allowing him to steal Sanctuel's skill. Jerem silently activates his transmission ability. The usual glowing circle appears and the skill transfer is successful. He obtains the F-rank Rain skill, which allows him to grow stronger by drawing strength from others. Confused but intrigued, Jerem recognizes this as a new way to enhance himself. Stankiel notices Jerem's enthusiasm, finding it strange. Jerem brushes it off as nothing. Turning to the captured gang members, Stankiel asks if they still refuse to join S.H.I.E.L.D. Dupel defiantly tells him to stop talking and just kill him already. Stankiel declares that he won't just execute the prisoners, he'll wipe out every member of the Hammer Gang. The gang members hesitate, sensing their fate. Jerem interjects, asking about the history between the two groups. Stankiel explains that they invaded Hammer Gang territory, leading to a battle with casualties on both sides. He asserts that Dupel sought death by provoking them. Jerem, understanding Dupel's reckless personality, finds it unsurprising. He inquires about the prisoners, and Stankiel insists they can't let it go unpunished. He plans to proceed with their execution. However, Jerem argues that some of them might have valuable skills, and it would be a waste to kill them outright. Stankiel acknowledges Jerem's proposal but expresses doubt, saying they've run out of ways to persuade the Hammer Gang. Even threatening their families hadn't worked. Jerem confidently suggests giving him 3 days to try again. Stankiel hesitates, questioning if such a short time would be enough. Jerem assures him that if he fails, they can proceed with the execution as planned. Seeing no harm in the delay, Stankiel agrees, appreciating Jerem's enthusiasm. He orders the soldiers to transport the prisoners to the detention camp, and the battlefield is cleared. Izio asks Jerem what they're doing next. Jerem explains that it's time to test a new ability. Curious, Izio presses for details, but Jerem simply states, actions speak louder than words. He activates Rain, setting its power to maximum level 10. Immediately, he feels an intense drain on his mana, but also an overwhelming surge of strength. Energy courses through his body, leaving Izio astonished at his transformation. Jerem slams his fist into the ground, creating a shockwave far more powerful than he anticipated. Izio rushes over, jokingly asking if he's on steroids. Jerem explains that the skill consumes a massive amount of mana, wondering aloud how Stankiel manages to use it so effectively. When Izio inquires further, Jerem awkwardly deflects, his mind racing with thoughts of how dangerous Stankiel truly is. Izio then asks if he really plans to persuade the Hammer Gang, given how stubborn they seem. Jerem replies that there are countless methods to achieve his goal. He adds that their next step is to visit the gang's base. Confused, Izio asks what difference that will make. Jerem explains that the gang's base holds something critical, Dupel's granddaughter who has the ability to awaken others. This revelation leaves Izio perplexed. Jerem recalls his first encounter with Dupel and how shocked he was by what he learned. In his 43rd nightmare, he decided to investigate the Hammer Gang to understand their inner workings. One night, a drunk Stankiel told Jerem why the gang was called the Hammer Gang. Jerem, uninterested, tried to brush it off, but Stankiel insisted on telling the story anyway. He showed Jerem an old photo of a young girl in a workshop named the Hammer, proudly explaining that it was where he used to work before everything fell apart. Jerem asked if the girl in the photo was Suryan. Stankiel confirmed, bragging about her brilliance. She was a prodigy who excelled in school, managing contracts and processes before even graduating. If the world hadn't fallen into chaos, she would have been famous. At that moment, Suryan entered the room, scolding her grandfather for drinking too much. She glanced at Jerem, visibly flustered. Returning to the present, Jerem notes how much has changed. A short time later, they arrive at the Hammer Gang's base. Activating his stealth ability, Jerem sneaks into the area where Suryan resides. He finds her immediately and uses his analysis skill. Kwak Suryan, 18 years old, a human with no class rank listed as a mediator. As Jerem suspected, she has potential but hasn't awakened. He deduces that Dupel awakened his men first to keep her safe. Jerem approaches carefully. Startled, Suryan drops her bucket and demands to know who he is. Jerem asks if she's Dupel's granddaughter, explaining that he has something important to discuss with her. Later, Suryan confirms the prisoner's capture, including her grandfather, and asks what they want from her. Jerem explains that to prevent their execution, they need her help. Suryan accuses them of planning to use her as a hostage, insisting that not even her grandfather would yield to such tactics. Jerem clarifies that this isn't their intention. He places a human stone on the table and tells her they need the ability she's destined to awaken. Confused, Suryan doubts her ability to do anything useful, questioning how it could prevent the execution. Jerem assures her that he has a strong feeling she'll awaken something invaluable. Reluctantly, Suryan takes the stone and agrees to try. The item is consumed and a glowing system window appears. She gains the unique ability to give a like know this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers, activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.